Well, hello everyone, and welcome. And just as we were coming on air, I spotted that I spelt America wrong. Oh,
did you do it with a K?
No, it's just a typo.
Oh.
I can't have that. I got more degrees in English than most people have got.
Than Lizzo's had meals.
Yeah, exactly. Oh shit. Oh, okay. It's got a mistake on it. If you're watching on Twitter, there's a mistake in the thingy. I can't fix it. I can fix it on YouTube, but not on Twitter, sadly. Okay. That's annoying. Very upsetting. Anyways, this was almost not going to be an reviewing Adam Curtis today.
Yes.
Because I noticed yesterday that the numbers for the first time in possibly over a year failed to hit the 7.8 thousand target that was set for every episode back in 2024, and that rule has never been rescinded. And so I put this out. I said last week's reviewing Adam Curtis did not hit the prerequisite 7.8. If it fails to meet this target, we will review Davos instead. And Simon actually intervened and said, you wanted a recount. People were saying, like, look, does it include views on Twitter? This cannot be. How can it be? And I responded, I said, Comrade Kalinin, the articles laid out by the Central Committee are clear that the requirement to reach 7.8 views before progressing to the next episode pertains only to YouTube views. This has been the case since 2024. It is the will of the people. And then, as if by magic, Simon, the count started climbing up late last night.
Yeah.
And you said, look, the view count production is up this morning, comrades. Long live the proletariat dictatorship of the deepest law. And lo and behold, it actually topped 8,000. And I said the workers have redoubled their efforts. The people have spoken. The quota has been fulfilled. The schemes of wreckers and agents of sabotage have been thwarted. Reviewing Adam Curtis will continue as previously scheduled. I mean, what a remarkable work demonstration.
Absolutely.
Of the workers' democratic will in action.
Absolutely. And if I may... Go on.
No, that was a work drive. That was like a Soviet-style work drive.
There was no elaborate work here. This was all organic and emergent. If I may, Comrade Chairman, I'd like to address the People's Congress of Deepest Law. As many of you will know, Deepest Law suffered low viewing figures last week, and many wondered in their darkest hour whether it would make the state-sanctioned target of 7.8k views. Comrades, this is a great day for the People's Soviet of the Deepest Law. The algorithmic running dogs of capitalist imperialism sought to prevent our dear leader, who has worked so hard to serve you, the motherland, from continuing this series. You must not seek to condemn him for this, for he has only ever sought to show things as they are, and not as we may wish them to be. It pained him out in his fully heated dacha in Surrey to see such low production figures, and he despaired of our great 5-year plan, which we were hoping to extend to a 10-year plan to cover all of Adam Curtis. But lo, from the east, the red star of hope renewed rose high over the horizon. There was electrification of the proletariat, and in mere hours, a new People's Army offensive annihilated the backsliders, diversionists, deviationists, and provocateurs. Victory was total and unending. The money power of the enemy slunk away bloodied with your noble and ferocious struggles to protect the people. Praise to the workers, solidarity with the comrades who helped on Twitter and Telegram. Long live our glorious leader, Comrade AA. And for those who say this was an elaborate work to push notorious class enemies like the heel Horus, many of you revile him, I only say our leader is merciful, and so he will only be purged next week and replaced with our new co-host, Ash Sarkar. Time Stealer most affected.
Sorry, have you really got Ash Sarkar lined up for next week, or is that inked or what?
Not as such.
I would just like to congratulate the wise words of the chairman of the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet of Deepest Law there, who's Simon Roberts, whose wise counsel as ever.
I've got a question. When you said capitalist, what was it? Imperialist capitalist running dogs. You looked at me. Was that a coincidence or not?
It was pure coincidence. Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that you're going to be purged is also a coincidence.
You know that I'm going to be purged before actually happening. Like, how come you know that I'm going to be purged already? You're not supposed to.
The Office of Central Planning seems to have it in the calendar. In the meantime, I'm going to open a can of Kong Strong from Lidl to celebrate. Oh, there we go. Lovely.
I mean, is it not true, Comrade Horus, that you have been a right deviationist on this show for many weeks?
Like, I didn't leave the chief bureau of organization of the Supreme Presidium of the party. The chief organizational bureau of the Supreme Presidium of the party left me. So
if any
I've stayed where I am. I've stayed where I am. And you've veered to the left, Maddie.
Off to Mexico with you. An ice pick is on its way.
I think solidarity for Comrade Horus. The party needs its theoreticians and revisionist historians.
Yeah.
So I'm to be allowed to live. So that's nice. I got a question about the Soviet stuff actually. You've read Molotov Remembers, haven't you?
Yes, fantastic book. Yeah, so good.
Yeah, I finished reading that a couple of weeks ago, and I just
did you read it? I mean, I found it absolutely fascinating too.
Yeah,
I mean, some of the most chilling moments. I don't want to sound like a shitlib here, but is the matter-of-fact way in which Molotov he's talking about tens of thousands of people being killed, and he just says, "Yeah, this was party business," or just like needed to be done. And that's it. That's the matter dealt with. You know, this is like this is someone who was genuinely committed and is kind of cold in a way. But anyway, what were your thoughts on reading Molotov?
It's like remarkably consistent man, right? I mean, this is obviously from interviews in the 80s, 70s, and 80s. I think obviously way beyond. I mean, it's after even Khrushchev and everything. And everything's changed, and like most of the world, even quite a lot of people around, like Andropov and Chernenko, and obviously Gorbachev as well, like agreed that reform must happen. Molotov, is unapologetic, unchanging, unbending. He's just like whatever he was in the 20s or whatever.
Yeah,
and he just describes and lauds like the repression that he was a central part of. And mass executions. He just says there was elements in the security services like under Yagoda and Yezhov, those sort of 4 years. Both of those men were executed and then replaced with Beria, I think, after them. Was just things got out of control. The security forces just started like saying that people were guilty when they weren't. And that's why, that's why so many people were killed. He said, but we absolutely had to terrorize the entire population into submission because we needed to get shit done. That's it. Amazing.
Yeah, and he never wavers from his defense of Stalin, even though, like, I mean, you got to remember, Molotov was exiled to Siberia for trying to overthrow Khrushchev as part of a kind of, I guess you'd call it a coup attempt. Him and three other dudes. I wouldn't call it a coup attempt. I would call it an attempt at preventing Khrushchev's coup. That's how I put it. But he was exiled, but he never let up hope that Stalin would be rehabilitated and that he himself would be rehabilitated. What I find fascinating about Molotov in that book is some of the incidental insights, like when he's talking about meeting with the Germans, when he's talking about he tells these stories about what Stalin was like in private, how when he got drunk the Georgian songs would come out. And also, Horace, if you read it cover to cover, you'll know there are little tidbits in there where he's very aware of the ethnic composition of some of his comrades. Let's just put it that way.
Well, his wife was of the tribe, right? But she was sent to the Gulag, maybe even executed. She was definitely sent to the Gulag. His wife, his Jewish wife.
Yeah, by Stalin.
Yeah, by Stalin personally, I think. Yeah,
but he, like, all the way through the book, he will, every time he mentions one of them, he will preface it with where they're from. It'll be like, the Jew this and the Jew that.
Yeah. I mean, people spoke just in more frank terms back then as well, didn't they? But the bits that really grabbed me early on as well, and they were highlighted in this documentary I watched called Messengers from Moscow. I don't know if anyone's seen that. But there's a couple of sentences from Molotov where he says, well, yeah, one was, I saw it as my job once I was the foreign minister as to expand the borders of the motherland.
Mm-hmm.
As in, and that was, he took over in 1939, shortly before the Hitler-Stalin pact was signed, or Molotov. Yes. And the other one was, I'll have to come back to it. If anyone in the chat has seen this documentary, Messengers from Moscow, it's a BBC documentary. It's remarkably it's remarkably critical of the Soviets in fresh ways, actually. But there's clips in it from that Felix Chuev guy who interviewed Molotov at great length. Like, he's in it, and yeah, it's something you might want to cover on the Deepest Law after we've done Curtain.
Yeah. When I read Stalin stuff as well, because I have this book on Stalin's letters and a few other Stalin books, it becomes really clear to me that Molotov is like pretty much the only guy he trusts. Period. Because there's that guy Iron Lazar, the
Kaganovich.
Yeah, he doesn't even trust him. He's like, because there's this moment where Molotov wants to go on holiday, and Stalin's like, you just can't, because you cannot leave him in Moscow unattended. You need to keep an eye on him, right? So that shows you that he trusted Molotov more than he trusted Kaganovich, even though history will remember Kaganovich as a right-hand man or lackey or something. He really didn't trust a lot of people, which is probably why Molotov stuck around for so long, right?
Kaganovich actually survived to the end of the Soviet Union. He's one of the very few people who served under Stalin who lived as long as that, and obviously wasn't executed or anything.
He also kept that Kalinin on for as long as he was alive. I think he died in office or something. There was a massive state funeral for him.
That exclave of Russia that's the other side of part of Poland, I think, is called Kaliningrad as well, right? Used to be Königsberg, I think.
He was like, I went through all of this on my various Soviet videos, but Stalin for a long time was just the general secretary of the Communist Party, right, of the CCP. So he's the general secretary, and then there's the Central Committee, and there's the Politburo, and he was the general secretary of the Politburo. Okay, the actual office holder was the chairman of the Presidium, right, which was Kalinin, and then there was also the premier of the government, and that was Molotov. For a long time, it was Molotov, and then Molotov stopped doing that job, and Stalin, I think, started doing it. Somebody else started doing it when Molotov became the foreign secretary. Even though in theory that's a demotion, in practice, Molotov got more powerful when he became the foreign secretary, if that makes any sense. So this is a curious element of communist regimes where the name top man is like a nobody or a puppet or something like that,
Before Xi Jinping in China, it was it Hu Jintao was the previous one?
Yeah.
before Hu Jintao, I think it was Jiang Zemin. But in his time, I think they tend to be for 10 years. They're usually in that position for 10 years, right? Except Xi Jinping. Yeah. But during Jiang Zemin, the other guy, so they have the same thing in China. Like the one person is the main sort of dictator kind of thing, but there's another guy who's pretty important, like the premier. And under Jiang Zemin, it was this other guy sometimes. I can't remember. No one's going to remember. That's very obscure.
It was the same also in Cuba, where Castro did not actually hold the office for a long time. It was some other dude that you've never heard of, much like Kalanin or something. I don't know why they always do that. There's like the real power, and then there's the front man type of thing.
And there's Kosygin through a lot of the Cold War as well, was the premier of the Soviet Union, I think. But the leader was either Brezhnev or Khrushchev or Brezhnev. But Kosygin was really important too. Like he would sometimes represent the government abroad. And stuff
and I mean, I did a whole video on this. I can't remember what it was called now. It was like the insanely complex structure of the Soviet Union or something. It was called that.
Which also kept changing as well.
Yeah. At that time, like during the Brezhnev time, the three positions had like almost equal importance. Like at various different times, people were able to build up power bases either in the Presidium or in the government, which is the premier. I mean, Lenin was the premier. So when it was Lenin, it was a genuine power role. But when it was Stalin, it was a puppet role. But then later on, when it was Brezhnev and was it Andropov and some other dude, there was three of them, and they ruled like the Soviet Union for like a decade. They were kind of roughly equal until Brezhnev sidelined the other two. Right, so they do kind of wax and wane over time. Those different positions. So
Brezhnev was general secretary of the Politburo. Is that right?
He was the general secretary, but I think at one time or another he held all three of those roles.
But not all at once.
Not all at once, and he partly held them to prevent somebody else being there as well.
I think the thing I really admire Stalin for is that apart from being all these things, he was also generalissimus.
Yes. And he apparently, in his own writings, regretted becoming generalissimo and said he should have listened to his generals more and wasn't a military dude and all that sort of stuff. How much of that is kayfabe and how much he meant, I don't know. But he's got letters saying like this was a mistake by me, and it probably cost us in World War II until he trusted his generals more to take the decisions. So that was
my impression is that he. Yeah, like from what I know of military history, which is not very much, but I have the impression he was pretty poor commander, messed up a lot. But certainly, like when he was in control of part of the Red Army in the the Polish War, the war with Poland in 1920, like he just screwed everything up. And there was other times, like like some people say that he conducted the early stages of Barbarossa like terribly. And, well, obviously he was somewhat avoiding decisions as well, but anyway. Yeah, he doesn't seem to have deserved to be general of generals, does he?
And there's something, at the moment, people are all talking about how to deal with Trump, and, Starmer kind of kowtows and snakes around him and tries to, like, weasel in his ear, whereas, like, Mark Carney is standing up to him. And so some people are kind of being belligerent against the bully Trump. Other people are worm-tonguing, okay? And there are stories that General Zhukov was one of the few guys who was prepared to just say, no, you're wrong. No, you're absolutely wrong, Stalin. We have to do it this way. And because he had a backbone and spine, Stalin kind of respected him more than the kind of weasels, if that makes any sense. So there's a bit of that. There's a bit of that there as well, that some of the military guys ended up. I remember in that film, The Death of Stalin, isn't Zhukov? I mean, he's even presented as like this guy with a swishy cape, and that it's even recognized by Iannucci in that film. But you can imagine
he's not afraid of anyone.
Exactly. So he had his own kind of authority that was separate from, not derived from Stalin, if that makes any sense.
Zhukov in particular had a personal popularity, didn't he? Like I would imagine the Soviet propagandists of the wartime made him a hero up to a point, and then because obviously Stalin got a bit scared at some point, didn't he? And demoted Zhukov and stuff. I think this is the very end of the war.
I guess it's difficult when you're the defender of the city that's named after you. You know, that you can't really, go too hard on the guy.
Yeah, I mean, he did try to sideline him, kind of, but the point is that he kind of respected him enough not to like try to have him killed, or like he knew he couldn't. If Stalin went and had Zhukov killed, it would have been a problem. It would have been too unpopular or something like that.
It's interesting to think about these moments of tension with military leaders and political leaders, and there's always the sort of conventional wisdom about the mustache man that beginning of the war he lets his people have this latitude of command and strategy to be able to enact things like blitzkrieg, the Auftragstaktik and all that stuff. Where they can kind of make initiative choices on the battlefield and punch through here and succeed there. And then, as again, to say, the conventional wisdom is later in the war, he starts making generalized sweeps in his plans and just ordering the generals to just do it. And of course, they're trying to sort of tell him it's not going to work. And there's that example that you think, well, maybe Stalin learns off that in some way, perhaps not. There's always the saying that armies don't learn from their own, from other armies' mistakes. They only learn from their own mistakes. But the other interesting tension with that is, we were chatting with someone last night, and we were talking about the Bay of Pigs, and Kennedy and Cuba and the missile crisis and so on. And he was remembering. There's a film about it, 13 Days, if anybody wants to watch, which is quite good. And he was mentioning how Curtis LeMay, one of Kennedy's military bigwigs, and a holdover really from World War II, bombers really, was enthusing about, we should just go in there and bomb the Ruskies, and that was a moment where that could have been catastrophic. So you've always got to sort of bear in mind. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. Go on.
He's a proper mad dog. He was just a genuinely dangerous character. He wanted to start the nuclear war.
Yeah. And as my friend pointed out, yes, of course, he's mindful of what, like many World War II generals, they're mindful of how the war kind of washed out and felt that maybe they were fighting the wrong enemy, etc., etc. But at the same time, you think, well, you look at the situation now. If you left the decisions to our military guys, our very hawkish military guys, especially in the UK, would that be the safest thing to do?
Yeah, and those commie guys, when I say commie, the pro-Stalin books I've got here make the argument that if Stalin hadn't have purged the old generals at the start of the war, that Russia could have lost. Like, i.e., the people who ended up getting promoted and in those general things had a different way of thinking from some of the old guard, and that this actually helped turn the tide of the war. Now, this is a pro-Stalin commie talking point. You can take it, but the argument is made in those books. So, you can look into it in your own time, make your own conclusions, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly when I hear some of our generals talk, they always back, like, I mean, there's that Major General Richard Hilton who I read. His solution to everything is just basically like, we can crush them. When we were talking about the Mau Maus and stuff like that, he was just like, we just knock them on the head type thing. You can crush it with force, because they're thinking like generals. They're always thinking, can we do it? Is it possible? And then, of course, you're going to back your own men. You're going to back your own army, aren't you? So, yeah. Okay. Just before we get going here, I'll remind everybody, promo code Shawjan gets 25% off all courses. Right up until the end of January. You've got about a week or so left. Also, I should mention this event I'm going to be appearing at in March to launch the Foundations of Shakespeare book. I put up a community note about it on YouTube, so you can go to posts, and I also put up a tweet about it. But you follow the link there if you're interested in that. I'll just, I'll be in conversation with somebody, and then there'll be like a Q&A thing in London. That's coming up. What about you two guys? Anything you want to promote?
If I may, I'll step in here. Those interesting chaps at Wilfings Publishing, who I think reprinted the 13th Power, which you did a forward for, didn't you? Is that right?
Well, I actually did the forward for. It wasn't the 13th Power. It was the other one.
Okay. Unfinished Victory?
No. That was.
I
I'll
think
tell you what
it
it was.
that.
Yeah, well, you know the one. It was the one about the decline of the British Empire and the betrayal of Tories, essentially.
Yes.
And
Yes.
giving away.
Well, they have reprinted a book by Mikhail Pervukin, as we're on our kind of Soviet riff at the moment. And Mikhail Pervukin was a people's commissar under Stalin and Khrushchev, and he did a sort of like, let's say, a memoir, a set of portraits of 10 of the different Bolshevik leaders of note. And they have done a translation of this. This has been revived since it was published, I think, in the 20s. And I recommend and urge that you go and have a look at Wilfing's site and purchase a copy of this fine tome.
Yeah, the Helton book, by the way, is Imperial Obituary.
Yes.
So the name escaped me for the moment. All right. And Horace, anything you want to mention, sir?
I'm on Substack at eternalhorus.substack.com.
All right, so we are going to endeavor to actually finish this. I feel like we've been on this episode for months, literally months, Simon.
Yes.
We're finally going to try to get through it today. Okay, so let's make a start.
Limonov and Yelena were helped by Russian émigré writers and artists already in Manhattan. And they soon became a glamorous couple, invited to parties by rich Americans who wanted to meet Soviet dissidents. But the New York Limonov had arrived in was not the city of his dreams. Much of it was falling apart.
Interesting left-wing writer called Mark Ames, who I quite like. He wrote a book 20 years ago called Going Postal, and it was about examples of workplace violence in Reagan's America. People who kind of just falling down situations, basically, guys who just snap one day and then, take a shotgun into work and start blowing the boss away. So he wrote an article, which I just want to quote a brief passage from on Limonov. Essentially Ames's theme back in that book, Going Postal, was very similar to, if you remember when we started the series, I talked about David Graeber, The Utopia of Rules, and how his basic thesis is that, what this series is about the divisions in society are about, if you like, the natural violence of society being driven underground. It's being funneled through increasing bureaucratization, where you engage in what he calls affective labor, which is emotional adjustment to effectively pretend to not notice your own enslavement. That's kind of it in a nutshell. And so this article that Mark Ames has written, I should say, a few years later, captures a little bit about Limonov and his sense of antagonism to an America that's kind of been sort of neutralized in this sense. This article says, Ames quotes about Limonov, "They moved to New York in 1975, where she ditched him for an Italian count. Limonov went on welfare, drank prodigiously, and, if his autobiographical novel is to be believed, had sex with anyone he could, sampling the gamut from beautiful young women to scabrous homeless guys. He poured his bitterness against Americans into the book. Quote, I scorn you, because you lead dull lives, sell yourselves into the slavery of work, because of your vulgar plaid pants, because you make money and have never seen the world. You're shit. He also raged against the West's propaganda about its freedoms. They've got no freedom here. Just try to say anything bold at work. You're out on your ear." That's Limonov in the mid-70s.
Interesting. Well, it was true then, and it remains true now. But at least it's not the government doing it, right?
effectively, it's us who've internalized the systems of control that mean that those, if you like, more raw atavistic relations between people, that depend on, Graeber calls it violence, structural violence, but really I guess he's talking about, the kind of norms of assertion of hierarchy and power that exist within societies. And these have been neutered by this, as he calls it, this bureaucratization of everything, the utopia of rules, everybody bending themselves, as we do in this country. The endless discourse is us, twisting ourselves into pretzels to uphold a legalistic way of running a society rather than a sort of, a model of governance. We talk about different model. We talk about democracy, and we talk about, would it be better to have a benign dictatorship, etc., where you can just get things done, So it's this. It's all about articulating this sense of a society that's kind of creased from within and is frustrated and is unable to sort of get back to this kind of authentic mode of feeling because everything has been, pushed through this legalistic framework of your existence where your power is neutralized and you can't even think about it.
Does he talk about why he thinks things became that way? What the origin of that is?
He does, but it's so far back that we started this series, I can't remember what he said.
Yeah,
but I will reiterate
or
as we go on. Graeber, I'm talking about.
Graeber.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. I mean, it's not. I wouldn't necessarily say it's incredibly developed thesis, but he goes through it in his own way and looks at it from the point of view as he was as an anthropologist. And go on.
No, go on.
No, I wasn't. I was finished.
Have you read his book Bullshit Jobs? Because that sounds a bit like that to me. Like it's like, yeah, this is roughly true, but are you going to tell me anything? Give me any insight about it? Why?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think again, as I say, I like certain writers of the left. I think they write in an interesting way. They may not have anything other than quite a thin thesis, but it might be an interesting provocation all the same to sort of look at what they're saying and steal the best bits.
Yeah.
With gangs burning down whole buildings for insurance claims. A strange, unreal mood spread through the ruin.
Just to add to that, and I think maybe this will resonate with AA as well, like reading historians, surprisingly, the left-right thing still comes into it in that way. In that a lot of left-wing historians are worth reading. I'm thinking especially of A.J.P. Taylor, who was like strong sympathizer with the Soviets. He was very left-wing. Reading his books, like I just took the facts out of it and just left his take on the side, on the cutting room floor. And I just used his treatment of the facts, which was very interesting and, as far as I know, well researched. So yeah, even in history, that's true. It's not just like sociology.
My view is, having read a fair bit of history, I don't exclusively read history, of course, is that the left-wing historian will give you the truth. They'll explain what happened. Your conclusion or your take or your sympathies maybe differ from theirs, but they'll give it to you straight, like a pear, made 100% pears, right? Whereas the centre-right historian will lie, or will try to
Neil Ferguson or Andrew.
Like any the right court historian is full of shit. That's been my experience, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to defend. I mean, the classic one would be trying to make out that Churchill wasn't racist, say, or trying to downplay the Bengal famine, say, or something like this, right? Because they've got an agenda there, and their agenda is something other than what they're writing about.
Their sensitivity to power relations is one of concealment rather than with the left, where they are kind of endeavouring to open up and expose power relations.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, and so many times in a left-wing history book, they'll be writing something with the thought, "Oh, isn't it awful?" But you'll just be thinking based. See, I mean, it's exactly the same. And this is where, I mean, I've actually done this exercise. I've got this book on jazz, right? By I can't remember who wrote it now. Celebrating the story of jazz.
Oh, is it by Morty Silverstein?
No, it's by someone called Martha something. It's called Hole in Your Soul, or something like this. But the thesis is identical to Julius Evolar's thesis in Negrified America. Identical, almost word for word. Only Martha Stewart, I think her name is, or was that was Moira Stewart, the newsreader, right? I think it's Martha. Her conclusion, Martha's conclusion is, and that was a good thing, whereas Evolar's conclusion is, and that's a bad thing. But the actual facts are the same. It's just one is celebrating it and one is saying, I'm not sure about this. Whereas the dishonest center-rightist will want to tell a different story altogether. Do you see what I'm saying? This is why I hate the center-right. They are the party of lies. Only lies.
I see them as the most accursed people involved in anything politics or ideologization or anything. Yeah, they are the ultimate enemy.
Well, this morning on our way into work, we had a report that the police had located a carcass in a street on 172nd and Bryant. It turned out to be a stripped carcass of a gorilla. It was headless, and the fur was removed, the skin was removed. South Bronx.
Pause.
There was also a mood of
That is a true story. There was a skinned gorilla carcass that was found at an intersection in South Bronx sometime in the 70s. It's a bit difficult to locate facts about it. It sort of became an urban legend, but it was attested as real by various people like this who you see interviewed. I think I don't know if he's police or fire, but you've got these anecdotal testimonies about it. What it was actually an actual gorilla. It was headless and it had been skinned. And what had happened is it was suspected that it was a carcass that had fallen off a truck that was delivering it to a local meat packing plant. Apparently the plant, it used to purchase dead animals from the zoo to use as ingredients in products. And the irony is it included a brand of hot dogs that were very popular with the local police.
paranoia.
Somebody in the chat has mentioned Fernand Braudel and said he is the best historian. I think he was a Gaullist. He was from something called the Annales School. And I've got a chapter on Braudel in Little Red Book, Shakespeare and New Historicist Theory, which is classic, real page turner, that one. But so there's I do my videos and you can see the books behind me. There are 3 books and people say, how are they floating? Right? But they're not. They're kind of wedged between one shelf and they're sitting on top of another shelf and they're in a case, because they're a folio edition in a case, so they're not floating. But those 3 books that look like they're floating are Braudel's classic book on Mediterranean in the early modern period. The Annales School are kind of Marxian, because what they do is they try to look at what Braudel calls the structure of everyday life and try to analyze life in the longue durée, right? What that means is he's looking at the overall relations of things, how things work, rather than looking at the kings and the queens and all the people on top. Braudel says that all that stuff is froth. It's kind of ephemera at the top. If you're basic peasant, if his life hasn't changed for 300 years, nothing's really happened. So you can see how a kind of slight Marxian or people's history thing lends itself to that way of viewing history. But his books are absolutely fascinating because it's very, I guess you'd call it material history, but it's like all about, cocoa production, or how like sugar came, how like sugar changed, was a genuine impact on the life of the peasant or the working man or something like this. So it's very evocative history. Like it's alive. Because he's talking about real things, and it's kind of got that. I mean, I don't know if you ever read some of the early Austrian economists, Horace, like Karl Menger or someone like that. I always thought Menger had this quality where it's like you can smell the shipping docks, and it's You know, it's kind of mundane economics, but it's, you know, you can almost like touch the spices, and I kind of like material history in that sense because you're dealing with reality in a way. So, yeah. Anyway.
Just briefly to address
yeah,
comments in the
go on,
chat
Simon.
about the meat as well. They found the skinned gorilla. Apparently 6 months later, they also found the carcass of a bear in the same place that was on its way to the meat packing factory.
Wait, what was the significance of the hot dogs thing?
It was it seems to have turned out in the story. You know, I can't completely verify all of this, but it was a place that manufactured hot dogs, and they were particularly popular with the local police force, who were the ones who picked up the dead gorilla. It actually got featured. The story was actually in an episode of Hill Street Blues, which people may or may not remember. It was a very early '80s American, a New York cop show, and it was part of a storyline in that. A lot of this stuff is actually coming from a documentary that Coast is using called Rubble Kings, which is about the sort of events in the South Bronx, you know, where you had, I think we covered in a previous episode, where buildings were being set on fire for insurance and so on.
Spreading through America. Nixon's own paranoia had been exposed by the Watergate scandal. But in its wake, all kinds of other revelations came out, of dark secrets in the political world that had been kept hidden from the people. That for 20 years, the CIA had been planning assassinations and overthrowing leaders of foreign governments all around the world, using poisons and specially made secret weapons.
Don't point at that thing.
Was this like mid-70s then, or like early to mid-70s? Was this the first time that the American public mainly knew about?
It was actually slightly earlier. This is a Senate Select Committee hearing. This is in 1975, where they're showing off this what's called heart attack gun. And this is something you sort of hear about, especially in this sort of conspiracy sphere. You know, they've got these guns that can give you a heart attack. Well, it was an actual item that seems to have been developed. They took a frame from a 1911 automatic and sort of retrofitted it with gear that could actually fire up a very thin, like a millimeter thin dart of frozen water with a shellfish toxin inside it. So it could penetrate the body. It would leave a little tiny red mark. The toxin would go into your vital organs and disperse and kill you very quickly, and it would leave hardly any kind of evidence at all. So it seems to have been a kind of real, you know, dirty tricks device of the kind that, you know, people like the OSS had developed during the war. They developed dart guns, and the Soviets had their own kind of, you know, what you would call assassination devices like this. But this is the Church Select Committee. That's the footage that is being taken here. This follows on in the early 70s with something that was called the Connus Intel, or the Army Files Scandal. And actually, if I may, I'd like to just read a paragraph. It's not too long. About this, there was a book by a guy called Robert O'Harrow called No Place to Hide about this, and actually about 20 years ago there was an article I found on the ABC News website, which is quite interesting. It was talking about this sense of, you know, the state plotting and planning against its own citizens and attempting to surveil and control them. And I'll just read this bit from the ABC article because it quotes some of the book by Robert O'Harrow about this era. It says, every time you use your credit cards or a computerized pass to enter a building or to get by a toll booth, you're giving up personal information about yourself. Author Robert O'Harrow takes a look at this trend and how it can affect your private life in his new book, No Place to Hide. So this is 2005. Robert O'Harrow writes, Christopher Pyle, a professor at Mount Holyoke College, remembers those days well. In 1967 and 1968, while serving in the Army, he taught law at the Army's intelligence school at Fort Holabird, Maryland. One of his classes focused on CONUS intelligence and spot reports. CONUS is an abbreviation in the military for Continental US, the Army's shorthand for intelligence in the continental United States. No one told him exactly what to teach, so he concentrated on what he thought the Army might need to quell riots, the use of maps, layouts of city parks for bivouacs, the configuration of bridges so that army trucks would not get stuck under them or fall through them on the way to a crisis. One day, An officer directly involved in actual counterintelligence operations approached him. "Captain Pyle, you don't know much about this, do you?" "No," Pyle said. "What can you tell me?" Pyle and another instructor arranged for a briefing. They were taken to a huge building that once had been used to assemble railroad engines. It had a large black arch, and in one brightly lit room, an interior cage made of mesh wire. Pyle walked into the cage, where an officer showed him books containing mugshots. He looked in the first volume and saw a familiar face. It was Ralph David Abernathy, Martin Luther King's assistant. Officers called the books the Blacklist. As Pyle recalled it, they were actually labelled persons active in civil disturbances. On a bench near the books was a stack of computer punch cards, the kind used in the 1960s to program the cutting-edge machines of the day. Written on the cards in pencil were the names of people whose information the cards contained. The top card was about Arlo Tatum, a man Pyle knew as the head of the Central Committee for Conscientious Objectors in Philadelphia, a group of activists who advised soldiers and others about their rights. Outside the cage, Pyle saw more than a dozen teletype machines. The head of the Connors intelligence section told him they were spitting out reports from some 1,500 army operatives about demonstrations with 20 people or more. Pyle was starting to understand how naive he'd been. He began formulating a plan. He would be getting out of the army soon. He could tell the world about what was going on. When he joined the army, he took an oath to defend the country against all enemies, here and abroad. In his mind now, that included the army's intelligence operation. They turned in their security badges and left the building. And this is quoting Pyle. "So I turned to the briefer and said, 'This is really terrific stuff. You're doing a great job. Do you have anything I can show my students?' The briefer gave him teletype printouts for the week of March 11 to 18, 1968. One of the reports on it told of undercover army agents attending a meeting at a Unitarian church. Pyle thanked him and turned in his security badge for the building. Quote, "It was very clear to me that we had just witnessed the essential apparatus of a police state," Pyle said. "It wasn't that these people were trying to create a police state. They were very nice people, the kind you would want as your friends and neighbors. But they were creating a reporting apparatus that was covering millions of Americans engaged in completely lawful activity." And that's where this church committee comes in, talking about the CIA's own operations of internal monitoring of dissidents of all kinds.
And was it ever dismantled, Simon?
Funnily enough, no. This all goes into the sort of era of things like COINTELPRO that people will no doubt have heard of out there. This particular thing, the heart attack gun, this was developed under one of the MK programs. You've heard of MK Ultra. This was a program called MK Naomi that ran from 1952 to 1970, and there was a place called Fort Detrick, which will be familiar to US viewers, as one of the places where bioweapons are developed, essentially. But yes, I mean, this stuff all tends to sort of, go underground. The CIA still has, a number of something like 11 grams of this, what's called saxotoxin, this shellfish toxin, and these, kinds of weapons. I mean, this is just what you've seen. Obviously, this is what has been, this is what has been shown in an open select committee hearing. And it was actually a CIA director who brought this weapon along. I mean, he called it something, he uses very euphemistic language. He called it a non-discernible microbio-inoculator, which means a hidden assassination gun, essentially. But that's what this era was about. So Americans beginning to become aware of the their own surveillance by the state.
Yeah, this is also like the era where they start infiltrating movements and embedding their own people, right? To the point where sometimes they're just like inventing new groups for the sole purpose of like entrapment or something. Or, I mean, we've already seen in this documentary groups where like half of the members were feds and things like this. It's just like, what's the point? At a certain level, what's the point? You're actually creating the problem yourself.
Yeah.
The RICO laws came in the mid-70s. That was a reason to have whole organizations under your control as well, right? because RICO allows you to prosecute organisation, like being in an organisation. That is a
the
crime.
legal apparatus gets put in place, to facilitate, whether it's the individual, if you or the group, you claim the individual as part of an organised group and therefore prosecute them on a perhaps slightly freer basis than you would if you had to be kind of a bit more.
I mean, that's just what's happened in Australia, just this past couple of weeks, isn't it? The entire nationalist network of Australia was shut down.
Yeah.
And presumably individuals who are part of that can now be prosecuted or watched or told that, tracked or whatever. So
I mean, I wouldn't mind so much if it was an open tyranny. It's just that them telling you that this is the society of free debate and sunlight, best disinfectant, and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's also that book, Who Paid the Piper, which actually tells the tale of the government just literally inventing political movements from scratch, like it didn't exist before. And when I talked to, I think it was Caleb Maupin, right, the leftist, he was saying, like, look, he was part of these groups when they were genuine, before they'd been infiltrated, when it was just like actual real people, genuinely grassroots, bottom up. And he said the truth is that those people couldn't organize, piss up in a brewery. They would, if it was left to them, nothing would ever happen.
Yes.
So it's like the government infiltrators come in and they make stuff happen as well.
This is precisely the thing I've mentioned before. The satirist Chris Morris, his last two films, Four Lions and The Day Shall Come, are kind of about this. I mean, the Four Lions film is meant to be about kind of funny jihadis who kind of mess up, but it's interesting if you look at the research interviews that he talks about in the preparation of the film. You can find them out there, and he talked about with Four Lions, he wanted to show this side of this kind of war on terror, whereby there were these individuated groups. I mean, Adam Curtis in Power of Nightmares talks about, he didn't think there was a kind of octopus-like James Bond organization called Al-Qaeda. There was a powerful idea, and there were independent groups. And Chris Morris shows a lot of these independent groups were kind of incompetent. I mean, he talks about some of the stories of these jihadis who tried to sort of set up these plots. There's one plot where they wanted to sort of, get a raft and get a bunch of explosives on the raft and sidle up to an American ship and blow a hole in it, like they did with the USS Cole. There was this one group of jihadis who got this raft and they got all prepared and they packed all the explosives onto the raft, and it was so heavy it sank. And then, he comes up with these stories of these people, as you say, who couldn't really get it together. And then, you see in the next film he did, it's about the FBI in America, where it's not conspiracy. There's documented history of them sort of activating plots, which they can then sort of, come in and claim the credit for suppressing, with people who are kind of barely competent.
In some cases, that is just flat out entrapment. They literally create the whole plot, and they position someone as the leader of it, and that person goes to prison for like 20 years or something. Yeah.
We saw it in Power of Nightmares, the guys, playing paintball in the woods, or the guys in Lackawanna, I think it was, who get put, or the ones who go to Disney World and do a video, and the FBI tries to make out that it's a terrorist reconnaissance video, etc., etc. Paper thin.
I'm a simple man, Simon. I take this information and I say the natural conclusion to draw is the person most acting like a Fed is probably a Fed. Right? I just draw that conclusion. I'm not going to name any names, but I just say the person most acting like a Fed is probably a Fed, given this. But people are very, very curiously resistant to draw that conclusion, and I've never understood why. Given that this is out there, given that this is so well known, why are people so resistant to draw that very natural conclusion?
We're all the stars of our own movie. We all think we've got more power than we do.
Could you call it like AA's razor or Parvini's razor or something? If they seem like a Fed, they are likely a Fed.
I mean, it's the guy throwing the Nazi salute. It's the guy who wants to, it's the guy who's Fed posting, for fuck's sake. the guy who's like, oh, hello, patriots, I know what we need to do. Blah, 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 blah. It's the guy who's advocating violence. It's the guy who's acting like a bloody Fed. It's the most obvious thing in my view. But anyway,
you can just do things, including getting yourself into trouble.
You can just do things apparently, and then go to jail for it. Okay, let's carry on.
Does this pistol fire the dart?
Yes, it does, Mr. Chairman, and a special one was developed which would be able to enter the target without perception.
As a murder instrument, that's about as efficient as you can get, isn't it?
Yes.
The uncertainty even infected those who had previously ridiculed all conspiracy theories. 6 years before, Kerry Thornley had begun Operation Mindfuck. He and his friend Greg Hill had planted fake conspiracy theories in the press and in underground magazines, alleging that the Illuminati were the secret organization behind all the assassinations in America. Their aim was to make people see how absurd all such theories were. But one day in New York, Thornley thought that he recognized the picture of one of the Watergate burglars on a magazine stand. He was certain he had met him 20 years before in New Orleans. Back then, Thornley had been friends with Lee Harvey Oswald. They had met when they were Marines together. Thornley had then lived in New Orleans, the same city that Oswald had lived in before the assassination. And he had met people there who later became suspects in the Kennedy conspiracy. Thornley had always seen these as coincidences, but in the new mood, he started to doubt.
I had met Guy Bannister, a suspect in the Garrison probe. I had met Clay Shaw 2 weeks before the assassination, and a discussion of my book about Oswald, the Idle Warriors, was involved. I had even worked in a restaurant where Oswald had lived in his youth with his mother right upstairs, right in the same building. So there were meaningful coincidences and meaningless coincidences, but I could not explain all these weird coincidences.
But at the same time, the fake conspiracy theories that Thornley had been spreading into American culture with Operation Mindfuck ever since the late 1960s started to be believed as well, because the real conspiracies were so extraordinary. Stories about the Illuminati.
We started this episode many weeks ago, didn't we? I mean, maybe it was even before summer, like holiday or something. Was Ken Thornley and this spreading, what was just mentioned, this spreading of false conspiracy theories? I don't actually remember that. Was that earlier
These are the
in this
Discordians. The Discordians. We dealt with them, I think, back in the first episode. It was kind of like a satiric attempt to sort of, comment on conspiracies in general by pumping, the discourse full of sort of these fake conspiracies. So it's just a provocation, really. It's kind of like almost like an art kind of approach to things.
Right. Yeah.
Person in the chat who mentions he Crypto Hazard. You say he met Clayshaw. Clayshaw is who he was talking about. Clayshaw was a figure in the Jim Garrison investigation into the Kennedy assassination conspiracy in New Orleans. He was a director of what was called the Trade Mart, which was a sort of business organization that filtered products to South America, and he was implicated as a possible kind of hinge point in the conspiracy in New Orleans to create the circumstances for the Kennedy assassination. And it was a prosecution that Garrison took forward unsuccessfully in the late 60s to try and pin something on, if you like, the government apparatus, the CIA, et cetera, et cetera. And he was acquitted at that trial. However, it did turn out about 12 years later that Clayshaw was admitted to be a contract CIA agent with particular influence in the South.
And a plot to create a new world order began to get mixed up with revelation.
Sorry to pause it again. Good music on this bit. Is this a bit of John Carpenter? Is
Um,
it Aphex Twin?
I wasn't going to say that.
Sorry, I'm just pulling a leg, Horace.
It could be a bit of Thomas Ragsdale, a guy who
Burial.
uses quite a bit in this series.
9 Inch Nails.
Yeah, I think it's a bit by Thomas Ragsdale called Jamais Vu.
Okay, Thomas Ragsdale.
High corner audio.
Okay.
I was just going to add Guy Bannister also, who Thornley mentioned there. Guy Bannister was also with one of the intelligence agencies, I believe, or one or more of them.
Yeah, he was ex FBI guy who. If you go and watch the film JFK and then do your own reading on top of that to sort of correct the record, you'll get a picture of it. But Guy Bannister was essentially made out to be Lee Harvey Oswald's kind of contact and handler in New Orleans. He was an ex-FBI guy who was on the quiet running operations. Was it Operation Mongoose, I think? Or at least he was one of the sort of substations of that, of people who were essentially organizing Cuban exiles to go in and launch a kind of counteraction against Castro. And, so he was part of a network that was training people up, ex-military types, to sort of launch, guerrilla actions in Cuba. And the idea about Oswald in conspiracy terms is that he was a CIA asset who was portraying himself as a communist. He went to the Soviet Union. He was brought back from the Soviet Union, which seemed sort of unlikely at the time, and that therefore created a kind of legend, as they would say in sort of espionage terms, for Oswald as a plausible communist, while at the time he was kind of part of a sort of an arrangement of people who were actually managing a conspiracy to get Kennedy assassinated, etc., etc. Again, that's the sort of JFK counter-narrative version. And, people have obviously discussed that interminably since. Go and look at it, do your own reading, etc. Was it a lone gunman? Was it a conspiracy? Interesting and a diversion.
He's a lone gunman, but he just was exceptionally good at gun play and was able to shoot from 2 or 3 different directions at once.
I was going to say, you can see how people go full Delling-Pole, can't you? Just like learn a bit.
No.
Yeah. It's very distracting. I mean, I was very interested in the JFK assassination conspiracy for years after watching the film, and went and looked at all the stuff. I mean, it's a sort of it's a great diversion. I'm not saying true or untrue. You feel at the time it's actually a question of, well, who didn't want to kill Kennedy? He had so many enemies, so it seems plausible, that the higher level psychopathy of the American intelligence and defense establishment and corporate actors who were sort of set to profit from Vietnam may have decided that the boy's got to go. That seems plausible in a certain way, but then again, etc., consider the possibilities.
I thought Dr. Strangelove hinted at something similar in that, like, when it comes to the crunch, I know it's a completely different scenario, but when it comes to the crunch, when they're confronted with, well, what to do in extreme situations, it basically just dispense with the whole population, and we'll be all right. We'll have loads of women, and we'll survive. Like, I do think. I mean, also what Dwight Eisenhower was hinting at with the phrase, the military-industrial complex. Probably also what Woodrow Wilson was hinting at with his leaving speech, his less famous one. And people at the top, they become really quite detached from what we would think of as reality. I don't know. They just think purely in terms of being in control, keeping control, stopping anyone like Kennedy messing things up, right? It's like, it's really hard for us to imagine how they begin to dare thinking that they might kill the president. But to them, it ain't. It's like he's an annoying prick, and they know that they can get away. Well, they believe they can get away with it. Because as long as
they've spent their decades since the war removing foreign leaders quite effectively. With
it almost becomes, like, in their eyes, almost obligatory. Like, it's almost their patriotic in a bit of a stretch, but they start to think that they're obliged to, especially as some of them would convince themselves these ridiculous ideas that, like, Kennedy was kind of a communist. Which was absurd, but, like, some people would convince themselves that
he was perceived as soft on Khrushchev, basically, wasn't he?
Which was nonsense, but yeah, like, some people actually got that into their heads that he was soft, at least. Yeah, kind of a pinko was.
The most convincing JFK, I hesitate to say conspiracy or explanation that I have come across is one that suggests that there was like a double internal cover-up, mainly because there was an attempt to pin it on the Russians, which wasn't true. But then, because LBJ wanted to avoid the Cold War turning hot, he doubly covered it up to stop anybody thinking it was the Russians. Because if they found out, even though the Russians didn't do it, LBJ still felt the need to cover it up. So there were, and that's the most convincing thing. But that explanation points to somebody else what done it.
I mean, I'm aware of the years since JFK. There's the Israelis in Dimona, etc., have also come into it. So there's contesting theories.
Yeah, in that version, it's Israel. In that version, it's Israel. I don't know who to believe. I also remember Thomas 77 said the official story is basically correct. You know, I don't know. Okay,
but it's a great show.
Yeah.
If there was a plot to blame it on the Soviets, would Curtis LeMay have been involved in that? Because he was still alive, right? I believe.
That was I mentioned him earlier as one of the kind of World War II holdovers who were still hawkish in the Kennedy Joint Chiefs.
Yeah, I think he was sort of Sorry.
Sorry, chaps. I've become slightly distracted because I've discovered this new account on Twitter, and it's making me laugh. Sorry to disrupt this JFK talk, but I have to share this with you. It's an account that's just called "Fell for It Again." And it's just all it posts is various "Fell for It Again" memes, but some of the memes are incredible. I mean, it's just absolutely endless. It doesn't matter what. It's just every single thing I don't know. It's making me laugh because it's there's Joe Rogan as a "Fell for It Again," Batman as a "Fell for It Again." It's just, I've never seen so many variations on the same meme, and some of them are incredible. Look, the one on Tulsi Gabbard. There's the Terminator 2. It's so amazing, that account. That was an instant follow for me. So like Jaws. It's so good. Anyway, let's get back to it. I just wanted to share that with people.
Brainwashing and secret mind control programs run by the CIA. And the line between the reality of political corruption and a dream world of conspiracy theories started to get blurred in America. But the sense of uncertainty and a feeling that systems might be out of control was also creeping into other areas. A group of climate scientists had begun to argue that the world might be on the edge of another dramatic change, that there might be a cataclysmic crisis coming, and that the reason this time was human activity. In the 1970s, there seemed to be dramatic shifts happening in the climate. In regions near the equator, there were droughts and famines. But in the Arctic regions, it was getting colder. Something was happening, but no one knew what. One group said that there was going to be a dramatic cooling, because the dust and smoke spreading around the world was blocking out the sunlight.
A man-made dust pall is spreading over the Earth. This dust blots out the sun and causes cooling on a worldwide scale. Not all scientists agree with this theory. I hope it's wrong myself, but there is no doubting its seriousness. For if this is correct, millions of people will be destined for chronic famine.
Pause. So that chap, Reed Bryson, he essentially kicked off the idea that aerosolized emissions of carbon dioxide were driving the warming of the climate. There was a perception in the 70s, because between the 40s and the 70s, the global temperature had, dropped about 0.3 degrees Celsius, and there were various discussions about this. And at the same time, in places like the Sahel in North Africa, there was increased desert creep or desertification. I mean, this is what I was taught at school. Essentially back in the sort of early to mid 80s, that that increasingly land would turn to desert. I mean, they didn't discuss the sort of correlate of increased migration to the west as a result of that, but it was the sort of horror at the ecological devastation of parts of the planet where it was just going to be getting hotter and hotter, and places would just be shriveling into dust and so on. And so there were these observations about Arctic cooling, in places like Greenland. And there was a sort of anxiety at the same time in the Northern Hemisphere about a new ice age. This was, again, the popular sort of science scare of the 70s. And you had the US agencies like NOAA, who will be very familiar, people will be very familiar with that in terms of climate stats these days, but also the CIA actually was issuing reports about climate change. Reed Bryson, again, he saw that there was a certain amount of cooling from aerosolized particulates. He noticed this when he was flying in an airplane into Bombay, and there was a lot of sort of dust kind of hanging in the air, and he was wondering why it was going on. So he eventually, though, looked at this and he thought, well, he said, all this argument, is the temperature going up or not? It's absurd. Of course it's going up. It has gone up since the early 1800s, before the Industrial Revolution, because we're coming out of the Little Ice Age, not because we're putting more carbon dioxide in the air. So he didn't think it was man-made climate change, as is the current sort of hysteria. Again, this is one of those moments where, our friend Ben Pyle, who we did All Watched Over by Machines of Loving Grace, would come in handy. But that's my grasp of the sort of summation of where we're at in the 70s.
But others said the very opposite was about to happen. There was more and more carbon dioxide being pumped into the atmosphere. That would trap the heat, and the world would grow hotter. And the key force behind that was the hydrocarbon, oil. In the mid-1970s, oil was about to play a crucial role that would increase the uncertain mood that today has come to dominate Western societies. A feeling that we are somehow surrounded by global systems, both natural and those made by humans themselves, that are beyond control. Systems so complex and unpredictable that they make a mockery of the idea that national governments can shape and control the world.
And sorry to interrupt, but this is something that Curtis keeps on coming back to. But it's also something that we're seeing with our current government right now, where Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer are so scared to say or do anything because they're terrified of the bond market or upsetting the markets. So they announce stuff, they U-turn, they back off, they're coy, they never take bold action. And they're scared to, because of the markets, essentially, because of what happened to Liz Truss. But the thing is that all of the toing and froing in itself creates uncertainty. So it's almost coming to a point where it would be better for the British government just to take a really firm stand and say, look, this is what we're going to do. And we're going to do this for the next 10, 20, 30 years. That's the plan. If you don't like it, the market's going to adjust, but that's what we're going to do. Because otherwise, we're in a deadlock forever. We're just stuck in this holding pattern forever. Am I wrong?
No. I mean, he could rebrand it. He could call it the 5-year plan or something like that.
Exactly.
But it's the precautionary principle, the deleterious effect of the precautionary principle in everything.
As soon as you mentioned that they sort of continue to vacillate AA, I just thought, well, why do they? And I expect the answer is that they just keep making the same mistakes, in that they just keep acting as though, because all the pressure coming from their party and so on will induce them to do this. They just keep thinking, that money doesn't really matter, and that like money is just limitless. You just tax more or just borrow more or whatever. I expect they just continue to act as though that's true and just keep being reminded in various ways that it's not true, and that like there are limits to how much you can borrow or tax or whatever. This is what that's what the Laffer curve and whatever. Do you know what I mean? When they tried to reduce some sort of expansion of welfare, what was it like last year? The whole backbench of the whole parliamentary party just sort of took control legislatively. What was it last year? It was famous. I don't know.
It was a backbench rebellion on the welfare cuts. But I mean, I guess the point is that they lack the political will or the kind of bloody mindedness to take on their own backbenchers and to take on the unions, right? Which is weak leadership by Starmer. But at the same time, they also lack any sort of, basically they're just like, well, let's do what the IMF tells us. Well, let's do what Tony Blair tells us, right? Which is also not really government, is it? It's like, well, what's the point of the government if they're just going to do what the banks tell them to do? Do you know what I mean? So, this current government is caught between a rock and a hard place. But the point is that they end up doing nothing a lot of the time, or just tweaking around the edges. But because actually doing something would require a backbone, a will, and a course of action, which is going to be unpopular. And what I'm saying is Keir Starmer, with his chopping and changing and U-turning and kowtowing and look at what the left said, but look at what the markets have said, actually creates uncertainty. He actually ends up dithering, and he's extremely unpopular. Right? So whatever Starmer's doing doesn't work, is what I'm saying. So, right, let's pretend you go the full austerity line, the full, follow the banks, do what Tony Blair wants, etc. You've got to do it. You've got to face down the party and just do it. Or if you're going to be left-wing, face down the banks and just do it. But they don't. They try to thread the needle all the time, which is weak and pathetic, if you ask me. And I to be honest, I think Nigel is going to be the same. I think Nigel is going to be scared of upsetting anybody too much.
Yeah, I think Farage would be very similar to Starmer. Do you think Starmer do you think he just takes? If Starmer just went to Blair and asked him, what should I do? Just tell me what to do, and I'm going to do that. Would Blair's advice just be face down the party, face down the?
Yeah, absolutely, face down because he'd say, look, where are they going to go? Right, your trump card is that you got a fascist who's about to take power. Where are you going to go? You're going to vote for the Greens? Get real. I'm the Prime Minister. And what Blair would be saying to Starmer is, look, you have to demonstrate it in action. You have to get the job done. Show receipts. That's the advantage being in government has. Do it with actions and not with words. And in fact, if I've got a video coming out tomorrow with Black Horse, looking at Mark Carney in Canada. And he said in Canada, the stats are incredible because they've had a more than 100% decrease in net migration. Okay. And he's got he's more than quadruple deportations and things like that. But he said in Canada, there is no right wing, really. They've done it without making a song and dance. They've just done it. But they've actually, Carney. So in Blair's ideal world, I think Starmer would just be doing what Carney's doing now. Just getting it done under the hood. No song and dance. Just do it. Show receipts. That's what he says in his book on leadership. That's what he says on Tony Blair Institute and so on. He'd be making that argument. Left-wingers would be making a different argument and they'd be saying, well, you have to face down the city. You have to show them who's boss. Put the state back in charge. Okay, I'm sure Adam Curtis would say the same thing, Simon. But, clearly Starmer's not going to be the man to do either of those things. For all his Terminator robot-like qualities, he's actually ended up being weak and ineffectual. Doesn't stand up to anyone.
Well, I don't know if this is relevant, but why does his party not rebel against him so much on immigration? They rebel against him when it comes to finance and welfare. Right? But he has also, his government, or this has happened during his government at least, immigration has actually decreased quite a lot from where it was under Sunak, right? Am I right to say that? I believe
that's
in
correct.
that headline.
Yeah, 70%
Like,
reduction in net migration. Yeah.
Isn't that like fascism to the left of his, to his left wing MPs? Like,
See, the thing is that the left. I don't think the left, even the Labour Party, are like fanatically pro mass immigration.
But the Tories are.
Well, Starmer's painted it as a libertarian free market experiment, and as the result of capitalism gone amok. So it's actually a very easy. It's an easy argument to make, especially when they're still run by the unions. Labour. It's not hard. If you're a workers' party, as Labour in theory are, it's not that difficult an argument to make, really. And even
true.
Even foreigners, foreigners, by which I mean like Labour stronghold migrant communities, aren't fanatically pro-immigration to their area at this point. If you're 2 or 3 generations deep in Bangladeshi area, you don't want the zone flooded with Somalis, right? I mean, these are some of Tommy Robinson's mates.
That was actually a good example as well, because South Asians, in my experience, are like extremely prejudiced against anyone black. Like, oh my goodness.
This is like your base Mr. Singh and stuff like that. They do actually exist. Any taxi driver you meet is like massively will be like a Sikh and racist, weirdly. So
it's barbaric. I knew a Hindu woman who was like, if they find out about my boyfriend, he is dead, and she meant it. It was a black boy. She had a black boyfriend. They would have killed him. Simple as that.
Yeah. I mean, it's always good to think about these constituencies in terms of, there are schisms within, very much like you talked about previously, AA, the generations of new, suburban folk in America in the 60s, moving from the cities, blacks moving to the new, Levittown type suburbs, and, having first move advantage, getting their nice little piece of America, getting the white picket fence up, and then noticing the extended families coming in and wrecking it from the cities and wanting to defend that. So that there is a vested interest.
We could even put it in more brutal terms. The Boris wave arrivals have no political power. They've got no political backers in the system whatsoever. They're not a rival castle. They don't have a power base.
They're not stakeholders in Tony Blair's
stakeholders,
terms.
So it doesn't matter for Labour. They can just move them on. Right, because they got no history. If it was a case of we want to, turn Birmingham back to being white or something, obviously all of Labour would have a problem with that because it's a Labour stronghold. You see what I mean? It's just like, it's what are the incentives of Labour? In fact, I did a video on Muslim organisation, which some people found interesting, about the relationship between the Labour Party and organized Muslim community in the country, and they've got their own it's kind of astroturf, but it's like an astroturfed Labour Muslim network that works to kind of undercut the actual Muslim community, whose name I forget now. There's originally Blair set up, or under Blair there was a Muslim council was set up, right? But at some point in the 2000s, they split massively with the Labour government over Iraq, over Afghanistan, over Israel, over because do you remember Ariel Sharon and all of that? They split over all of those sorts of things with Labour, anti-Zionism and all the rest of it. So Labour basically said there will be zero relationship between the Labour leadership and this Muslim council, and then they set up their own Labour Muslim network or something. Tories did the same. So within Labour, they're thinking of votes and strongholds for them, not total number of Muslims in the country, if that makes any sense.
So what we've arrived at, maybe I'm a bit slow, maybe other people have arrived at this already, but what we've got now is that Labour have become kind of conservative about immigration because they quite like the way things are. Whereas the Tories are like the radical extremists, like driving it forward anything to do with immigration. They want it all. They want every kind of it at all times to the maximum number. And it's like, the people who get a lot of the hate, in some cases deserve, but you just say, like, just a standard Pakistani person in Britain doesn't have the mission necessarily of making us a minority, but your average Tory MP does. Like, they are actually on a mission to make that happen. It's amazing.
Because Boris has got this whole vision. Oh, the talent is out there waiting to be found. You know,
I think Boris is more sinister than that. I don't think he's even a genuine globalist. I think Boris is like deeply evil person. Like,
don't you remember? We need to invite in the Hong Kongers and all this sort of stuff. Because in his view, he's just thinking lovely GDP, lovely markets.
Got to get the FT back on side.
all this sort of stuff.
That was like a much later sort of second-hand comment from Dominic Cummings, though, right? I don't believe that that's actually why. I think Boris Johnson specifically wants to make it a majority foreign country, like a global village country sort of thing. I think that's like he's like profoundly like anti-white and anti-Western. Mate, I'm just reading. I
can't see into it. I can't see into his heart for us, I'm afraid. No. But based on the things he said, I do think Boris Johnson is genuinely egalitarian in so much as he doesn't see race or color or anything. He just thinks of people in terms of talent and interchangeable kind of prospects for talent, if that makes any sense, like equality of opportunity or something like that.
I think his vision for Britain is probably best located in something like one of the Paddington Bear films. You live in a nice £4 million house in, West London, but you welcome in anybody and everybody, but it doesn't really affect you.
No, exactly, because Mr. Singh also has a 4 million, also somehow can afford to live in a £4 million house in the middle of London.
Incidentally, one of my friends in a group chat said Richard Tice looks like the villain in a Paddington Bear film.
He does. He genuinely does. And also, I noticed yesterday that the dad from Paddington and Ed Davey are very similar looking men. Ed Davey looks like the dad from Paddington.
That's it, Hugh Bonneville, yeah.
Can I just get, for the people watching, can I just get an R in the chat for people who hate Richard Tice? Because I absolutely detest him. I hate him so much. He's worse than Farage. He's worse than almost anyone.
Oh, Tice is bad.
You're not going to have trouble there.
Steaming mad. I will say, though, he does do a good 10-minute media interview. I've seen him perform well. And in the context of, let's say, an LBC roundtable, like everybody's rolling their eyes, he kind of sounds like the one with common sense, and that's kind of a worry, really.
Incidentally, I picked up your reference yesterday, the Daily Mail, in office hours to the very good Harry Enfield parody of Have I Got News for You?
That was also a callback to Mr. D. Always would, every time the Daily Mail will mention, he would go, "Oh my God, the Daily Mail," as a reference to the Harry Enfield. So.
Yeah, I'm clicking my pen now.
The Tories, bankers, the bonuses.
100 years before, coal had done the same. It had brought millions of people into the new industrial cities, where they worked for the men who owned the vast wealth that the coal had created. And that money was so powerful that it seemed to control everything. Not just people's lives, but politics as well. But slowly, out of that came a challenge to that power, based on the workers organising together. And from that came the idea of mass democracy. That
the workers up there, they're my people, Horus.
There you go.
Scargale.
Yeah.
No.
There you go. I was just going to say, this is February 1972. That footage is a funeral of a chap called Fred Matthews. He was killed while picketing a power station in Lincolnshire. There was a miners' strike that went on for 7 weeks, and massive turnout for his funeral in Doncaster. And after that, there were increasingly violent clashes, and basically one of the Labour MPs at the time said this could be the start of another Ulster in the Yorkshire coalfields, and he even threatened to advocate violence if the government, didn't issue a statement or about this moment where this guy had died, and there was a protracted discussion. The NUM, got about 15 pay concessions from the coal board. They won eventually, and the Conservative cabinet said this was a victory for violence. So this was a very real kind of sense of ferment at the time.
But why should Horace, the fat cats, profit from the surplus value generated by the blood, sweat, and tears of these men when they're sitting at home doing nothing?
It's the bosses, isn't it?
If maybe after Curto, I mean, we're going through Curto quite slow, but if at some point we do other things in the deepest law, I'm happy to do several documentaries on the 70s and 80s about this whole arrangement, like the corporatist sort of thing, as they called it. You could say peaked in the 70s in all sorts of ways. It was at its most, in effect, there was the most number of things were nationalized and all sorts. And then it obviously began to crack up in the mid 70s, or like obviously Jim Callaghan turned against it, and then Thatcher. I think it's very interesting, but I am also a little surprised. Are you actually a Scargillist now? He was a commie, right?
Well, one of my issues, though, right? Because I know Austrian economics inside and out. This question is dealt with by Eugene Bomberwerk in his massive refutation of Marx. And when he gets to the question of wages, there's a passage that I reread it about 15 times because I couldn't believe what he was saying. He was basically saying, basically, if you're in a situation, the worker can, especially if it's a monopoly situation like a local mine or something, the worker could be bid down, right? Could be bid down if there's, if power is with capital and not with labor. And basically, it's hard cheese. What you're going to starve? You'd rather have the wage, right? So basically, what I'm saying is Bomberwerk is forced to admit in this passage that, you can get situations where the situation of the worker is quite desperate and, you're barely above subsistence or subsistence wages, which is kind of a very roundabout way. I mean, he's got this whole thing. It's all about time preference, and it's all about the fact that the worker gets paid now, right? Whereas the entrepreneur has to wait for the return on investment. That's how the Austrians justify it and say that it's not an exploitative situation because you're accepting the wages, and this is a trade relationship just like any other trade. You're accepting wages now, whereas the employer has to wait for future returns. Your money is guaranteed, and the entrepreneurs is in prospect only, okay? And you accept that amount of money because it's guaranteed. But he is forced to admit that if somebody's hard up, they're going to be like, it is a pretty, for any normal person, you say, well, it's an exploitative situation there because you're getting this guy to work for pennies when it's a tough job, and you're only going to do that because he's desperate. And so that there is this moment where I thought, well, I mean, you've justified it, but if I was a leftist reading that, I'd be thinking, okay, you're basically just saying hard cheese, mate. I side with the big guy in the big top hat. And it's very little like, do you know what I mean? You know what I mean? I understand the justification from it from the Austrian point of view, but when push comes to shove, it still looks like exploitation to any normal person, because it's like, well, take this money or starve. Well, okay, you're going to take the money, but he still got you over a barrel. Do you understand what I'm saying? No?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
And I honestly believe that the Austrians or the free markets economists' inability to solve that problem or to answer that question ultimately makes some degree of socialism inevitable. And this is also what Schumpeter gets towards when he's talking about the the creative destruction, which all libertarians say is a great thing. But the point that Schumpeter is making is, look, you're making all these people unemployed. They're going to be fucking bitter. They're going to be and you're giving them nothing. You need to. Any state is going to have to compensate those guys who've been put out of work. You can't just tell them learn to code, right? And so like it seems to me that guys like Schumpeter like saw this sort of thing coming, whereas the guys like Hayek and so on who stick to the orthodox free market line, they just don't account for the actual kind of human relations and the human feelings and the fact that any normal person is going to be like, look, you exploited me for all those years, now I'm out my ear, I've been left with nothing, you guys are laughing all the way to the bank, right? You're going to get political and social problems. And look, even MAGA to some extent is this, right? Even the backlash around neoliberalism not working for people is to some extent still this, right? So I mean, I don't say I have the answer. I'm just saying that, how can I put it? Like, it's going to sound lame, but the Austrians are too like hard-hearted, or they don't actually. They're so autistically focused on working out the interest rate or working out how it works in property rights and so on. They don't account for just the real world, and the real world is this what we're watching here.
I think like what Austrians do is they just try to explain like the economic phenomena or the economic process of the world. In terms as economists anyway, they are often also ethical theorists and stuff, or ethical arguers. But in terms of just figuring out economics, they're not saying that nobody will be poor or that there won't be some people earning a great deal more than others or stuff like that, and that some people will be struggling, and they themselves would generally remind everyone arguing with them that like the primordial state from which we emerged is total poverty, like literally hand to mouth hunting and gathering, right? Or the very best we can do, and some people just starving and dying. And that we advance, like some of us, those of us who managed to accumulate some capital and build upon it, advance some way away from that, but we can fall back towards it. We all can fall back towards it, or individually. And the objections made, like they're to things that the Austrians haven't said usually, right? We're not saying we've got bread for you all. We're saying,
but like I mean,
if you're wondering why things are as they are, this is how they are, and if you're wondering what's going to make things better, well, this is the logic.
If push comes to shove, though, if push came to shove, let's say you're one of these miners who's been put out of work, right, or or whatever, your Rothbard or your Bomberwerk, or they're going to end up saying, Hartree's going to have to move, or okay, it's a bad situation, but charity exists, or something like this, right? It's always some line like this. That's not going to be what the guy wants to hear in that moment, right? And
miners of all people, of course not. No, they've worked. They almost all, like in Britain, through the whole from the 40s to the 70s, they all worked for the state, and they worked they got up to a level by the 80s of a pretty comfortable living as well. And they have, of course, they're going to expect the state to just keep giving them, or they're going to demand that the state just keep giving them money, or a lot of them are, and they did, and they lost. So there's a whole history from before Thatcher's time, like there's the whole preceding 40 years of mine, like the number of mines and the number of people working in mines peaked in the 40s. There's a long history of people in villages where the pits were eventually exhausted or became uneconomical, and they did adapt to some other kind of living. They had to, and they did. So the story of it's an emotional story, the one of Thatcher just turfing them all out or whatever it is. But like it was your Wilsons and your Macmillans and your Callahans, and everyone was shutting down mines all the time as well. It's just there's just a convenient truncation of the story to demonize.
My point though, they're still not going to want to hear, oh right, F.A. Hayek said this, therefore you got to go and work in Tesco's, Fred. They're not going to want to hear it. Do you know what I mean?
But of course, it should not be the state telling you who you're going to work for like that. How did that come about in the first place? That is not the historical default. What we evolved out of. That's just a 20th century thing. The state assigns you to a job, redeploys you here, and has a safety net for you there and stuff. That's a 20th century thing. And they're the people who are most dependent on it and the most you should expect to fight for it. But they should consider everyone else. You know, it's not the whole world isn't just arranged for one particular class or one particular demographic or whatever. They should consider how they relate to everyone else, and it's actually really complicated. It's not just a case of just give me stuff. Like no. I'll be the hard nose if that's what it takes. I'll do it. Like as long as they're not allowed to kill me or something, because some of them would. Some of them are thugs. You know?
Yeah. Okay. Let's carry on.
Think about the great tapestry that you're part of. Everyone has to, or just don't understand the world and just be a thug. Like, but you know, we're part of a complicated thing.
I mean, it is basically true that mines weren't making money, right? It is. I mean, all of that stuff is true, but it's like I don't know.
What was the plan, right? So people often said, and like completely understandably, that a mining village, when the mine shuts, that community, which could be extremely cohesive, really admirably close in loads of ways, right, was just left obviously destitute, and there's just no jobs there apart from a couple who work in the post office or whatever. What was the plan? Like obviously Thatcher and co had no real good answer for that. Like, you know, what to do with all those people, and it was, you know, 1,000 people there, sometimes 5,000 people there, and it's devastating, right? And it's really sad. Like something really like lovely in some ways was just destroyed. But what was the plan anyway for when those pits were exhausted? Because there's a limited amount of coal in each place. What was the plan anyway?
Well, why? I mean, the thing is, if you pick up your Mises, it says, well, capital will reallocate to more productive ends. But the fat cats or the mine owners or the state didn't say, all right, well, the mines aren't making money anymore. I mean, some of them were making money, but, you know, it doesn't matter. Let's just pretend they weren't making money. Milton Friedman said we have to shut these mines down, you know, because he came here and had a look at them. But we're going to open up this thing here instead. We're going to open up a factory. We have reallocated, you know, capital to more productive ends, and there's going to be this thing there. So you guys, you know, you may have to retrain a bit. There's going to be jobs here. There's going to be jobs here. There's going to be jobs here. They didn't do that though, because they closed they closed all the factories down too.
You don't do that. Like there's just some location where the main employer's about to disappear, so let's just create another employer there. Like what? That's not the norm. That's not the way of things.
Why not?
They tried it in Hartlepool, where I'm from, in the northeast. They closed the steelworks down in the mid to late 70s, I think, or it could have been the early 70s. And the only industry that, I mean, this is why my family left, because there was a recession that was heading our way. And the only new thing that they put in was a cake factory. We all thought that was quite funny, sort of let them eat cake, you know.
Well, not even that. Let them labour at making cake.
Yeah. Alienated from their cake, yeah. But a cake factory, and I think later an art gallery. I think.
I mean, the thing is, it's not like America where people can just up sticks and move, or the town just collapses or something. We haven't got the space. So it's like, well, we've got all these people here. They are workers. They don't have the capital to open the new factory themselves or something new themselves. So we are going to have to put something there, given that we were the employer before. Otherwise, it's just wasted human capital.
No, wherever there's been sort of, I don't know, geolocated natural resources that expire, people would have moved there, and then when they expire, they have to move away, I guess. Like, I mean, same with gold rush or oil finds, or I don't know, like anything, copper. Like, I'm sure that must be the case through history. Like, what people, you know, once it's not worth digging there, you just move away. You have to. It sucks. I'm sure they did have very cohesive communities and stuff, and I've seen bits of video, and it looks like, yeah, they really did have what you call a community in the real sense of the word, and it's just dissolved. I'm sorry about it, but like, I didn't do it, and it's the way of things through history.
I think the comment in the chat that Horus is basically Ben Shapiro is a bit unfair.
Yeah, fuck off. Who said that?
I won't identify the person in the chat who said that.
Knocked you out.
I think they're trying to be provocative.
I don't know. I feel like you're dealing with too many millions of people here to just say, "All right, you all have to." I mean, it's just not practical. Where are they going to move to? They haven't got any money, mate. They've just lost their job. There's nowhere to bloody go. The house prices are going through the roof. There's no social housing because Maggie bloody privatized it all.
I think the high point of people employed in mines was in the 40s, and I think that was in the low hundreds of thousands, like 200,000 or 300,000, something like that. And it was down to way less, like way under 100,000 by the start of the 80s. And obviously they got families as well, but so it's like pretty serious. But
let's remember, Labour closed more mines than the Conservatives, numerically.
And it was a story from the 40s to the 80s. Well, from the 40s onwards, mining was in decline in terms of number of people employed, number of mines, amount of coal being used, and everything. Just peaked in the 40s. So it's not a Thatcher thing.
Here we go. Horace the Milk Snatcher strikes again. All right, let's carry on.
I'm all up for this. There's several good documentaries about the miners' strike and stuff. It's really interesting. I love it. I love talking about it. It's really interesting. And I do feel sorry for people. I hate seeing, like working men, just decent, normal men, just being clubbed around the head by cops from the south who are having a laugh with it. I think it's funny.
And this is why the moment we're in. And this is why the moment when it means that we can't just do reheated Thatcherism. We're not going to be entrepreneurs. We need broad industrial base. Thank you, Nigel.
Nigel's going to take the milk again. Didn't Labour bring the milk back in the schools?
Richard Tice is going to come round in a child catcher suit.
They'll actually send Gendrick, remember Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, the child catcher? They'll send Robert Gendrick out in that with a little net, coming for your milk. Then people will say, you're the Tories again, aren't you? Oh no, we've changed now. It's reform this time. All right, let's carry on.
Politicians was to represent the mass of the people against the powerful. But now, oil was about to start something that was going to undermine that idea.
This is King Faisal of Saudi Arabia. He's going to have a great deal to say in the next few years about the way you live. He rules over a desert kingdom of 6 million people. In this decade of the oil shortage, he's one of the most powerful men in the world. Under these sands, there are proved deposits of 160 billion barrels of oil.
Starting in 1973, the Arab countries, led by King Faisal.
Can I just stop again? Sorry. How comes that 1970s footage of the desert looked more like Orientalist and kind of like, it's your Tintin's Middle East instead of like, you don't see like footage of desert like that anymore. It's weird, isn't it? I don't know what it is. I think it's like the ripples in the desert.
Yeah.
I feel like since Iraq, the desert's been a different thing.
I think there was still that we saw on a previous stream, actually. I can't remember now, which it was one of the sort of, it might have been on a stream or it might have been something in my Twitter feed. We talked about the sort of, when people like Ridley Scott used to make adverts, and they do like the Turkish Delight advert, and it would be kind of Oriental romanticism about the Middle East, which kind of was there, especially in the 70s in Britain, when Arabs were sort of buying up most of London and they became much more visible and conspicuous. There was a sort of, I think there was probably a sort of, white liberal woman fetish about being snatched away in the white slave trade or something, and by a kind of, Rudolph Valentino type of sheikh or something.
My books by John Bagot Glubb about, his Arab histories and things like that, they've all got a flavor of that 60s, 70s Orientalism about them. You only glimpse it now in theme parks, where it's like kiddies ride. You go in through Ali Baba's cave or something. That's the only bit that or Disney's Aladdin or something like that. That's the only vestige of that still exists. I should mention, whenever I see this Faisal character, I am always reminded of Cardinal Richelieu in the cartoon, the Dogtanian cartoon.
Yeah.
Do you remember the sneaky cardinal? He just looks identical to Faisal. So anyway.
We had Faisal in earlier episodes, didn't we? Like Bitter Lake.
Yes.
I think. Is he in
Yes.
Mayfair?
I've probably made that comment every time I've seen him.
Yeah.
He looks like he also looks like a Tintin villain as well.
Very much.
Yeah.
Decided to use oil as a weapon. They wanted to force America to stop supporting Israel. And they did with oil.
That went well.
Just what the miners had done with coal in the past. The Arabs blocked supplies and then suddenly raised the price 4 times. It was a dramatic exercise of power, and it caused chaos in the American economy.
As a friend,
go on, MBS, do it again. Do it again. Could they do it again, or are the Americans plan for this now?
There's a funny line coming up in the narration on this advert, so we'll see.
Of the United States, we are deeply concerned that if the United States does not change its policy in the Middle East and continues to side with Zionism, then I'm afraid such course of action will affect our relations with our American friends, because it will place us in untenable position in the Arab world and vis-a-vis the countries which Zionism seeks to destroy.
For almost 3 decades, we have been the richest, most powerful nation on earth. Now, a nation of 6 million warns us we must change our foreign policy if we want full gas tanks.
Pause.
It had a
Now a nation of 6 million warns us we must change our foreign policy if we want full gas tanks. These small nations.
To Saudi Arabia?
Yes.
dramatic
The population's
effect.
bigger now, isn't it?
I imagine so.
They're all migrants, though, aren't they, in Saudi Arabia? It's got a huge, because they did. My understanding is in all these Arab countries they didn't do anything. The Arabs.
I think
Just like-
Saudi Arabia's out of the GCC. I think Saudi's the least like that, though. It has got its own largest population out of the 6, I think, because they
And
got
they're
a
not-
large. Sorry.
They're not all welfare slugs.
And they've got their large Shiite population as well, like nearly half the population or something, that lives around the oil as well. It's complicated.
Do they do any work?
I think, yeah, I'm not sure. But Qatar and Bahrain and I think probably UAE as well are the places where you've got like 10 times the size of the indigenous population working as like foreign semi-indentured servants and stuff, haven't they?
In my mind, no Arab has done any work for like 70 years. Just sort of rolling, wiping themselves with, $100 bills and, smoking them and kind of like Scrooge McDuck, like diving in pools of money and things like that.
And like having a Bugatti in every different color and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Money suddenly poured into the Arab world.
Lots of them are really fat as well. I'm not just stereotyping, like they're properly fat. Arabs, that is. I'm not. There's probably data on it, but there are some really very large gentlemen.
It's very true. It's very true. When I used to run a private gastroenterology practice, a lot of people were coming over from Saudi, from the Middle East, for operations to head off diabetes.
Yeah,
because of that very issue. So there's a lot of custom for that.
Much of this is caught in the hip hop classic by Busta Rhymes, which is simply called Arab Money, which is a song about Busta Rhymes taking a shitload of money from Arabs and having the time of his life and hiring out some hookers and banging them, basically. So
within 3 years, Saudi Arabia had more foreign currency than Japan, Germany, and the United States put together. But the Arab governments had no idea what to do with this vast new wealth. So they turned for help to the Western banks. The banks realized that they could take these petrodollars and turn them into a new kind of international currency.
to be honest, I kind of respect the hustle of Busta Rhymes. if you're a bloke from like the ghetto or something, you've made it like talking fast on songs, and some Arabs like, yeah, I tell you what, mate, I'll give you like 10 million quid to come over here, you know, dance with some girl shaking her ass and sing us a couple of songs, and we'll give you a Ferrari and a shitload of money. You're like, yeah, absolutely, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Fair play to Busta Rhymes and those guys.
Just come and hang out, bro.
Yeah, respect the hustle. Respect the hustle.
Free of all government control. And soon, politicians from all around the world were coming to the new headquarters of the Western banks to elaborate signing ceremonies, where they borrowed billions of the petrodollars. And that global financial system that President Nixon had created by accident a few years before now became a giant force, one that held the destiny of millions of people in its hands. And politicians became increasingly convinced they couldn't control.
Pause. Just a brief note about the musical underscoring again. As I say, Curtis doesn't score literally, but sometimes he picks tracks with a title that tell you some of the story of the scene. And in this scene where they're talking about, you know, the Arabs taking the initiative in the 73 energy crisis and telling the world, you know, you're going to pay more for your oil. The piece of music he's selected here is a piece called Take a Look at God's Face.
I have to say that after watching a huge amount of Curtis's oeuvre, dare I say it, Simon, that he may at this point start to be a little bit repetitive on this particular theme. I mean, he's probably hit it about 50 times now in the documentaries. He is obsessed with this notion of the money power taking power away from the government.
Yeah.
And yet he never mentions like the old philosopher. I don't know, or like what was Spengler like? He wasn't a philosopher. What was he? A historian or a historical theorist or something? But like people like him and who else did ever talk about the money power? Like he never like gives any credit to the earlier people who saw that as the, you know, or Quigley, Carol Quigley, the people who saw that as the I don't know, the determinant like fact of maybe the mid 20th century.
No, I feel like his frame is still coming mainly, as we discussed before, like FDR and post-war consensus Britain, basically. Those are his two touchstones. And I feel like his critique starts from there. He doesn't really. I get the impression he hasn't read Spengler.
Yeah, he's more into Max Weber than he is into anything like that.
Yeah.
See, Weber was before the three people I mentioned, wasn't he? He was like late 19th century, early 20th, I think. Like, I think you're right, AA. That like, Curtis is like really, focused around the post-war consensus, I guess. That well, at least that era of history. But like Evola writing, started writing before the Second World War, right? I believe Quigley wrote especially in the 30s, 40s, I think. Yeah. And Spengler was big in the 20s and 30s, right? And these guys were already talking about the money power. I think it's a silly notion myself, but like, I mean, it's considerable. It's like, and
I feel like of the three of those that you mentioned, Curtis would only touch Quigley.
Yeah, Quigley was quite au fait with.
He
FDR,
might quote Spengler because Spengler's like a household name. Everybody knows of that, is at least aware of the decline of the West as a book. But I feel that he would be perturbed or think silly of the metaphysical element in Spengler, or you wouldn't want to touch that.
Yeah,
for whatever reason, because it's right coded, or it's too much like German idealism or romanticism, and Curtis is coming from a very different place, I think.
Yeah, he has an idea of a romantic narrative, but it's not one based in these kinds of origins. You've got to remember what intellectual background he's coming from on that part of the left, which is aware of the failure of the left, and which is reaching for solutions, but. You've also got to think who his audience is as well. The interest is again for us that he converges on certain things which we can find interesting. We can do parallel explanations for.
That said, I wouldn't rule out Curtis ever making a documentary, maybe when he's an old man or something, or at some point, on something approaching the pattern of rise and fall. Right,
Well,
he's definitely interested in empire and the decline of the British Empire. We're watching the decline of the American one now. I can imagine Curtis kind of going along that theme.
Yeah.
Something like this.
Well, interestingly, his recent interviews, he was asked what his next project was going to be, and there was a discussion that was at Goldsmiths actually earlier last year, where he was asked about his kind of white privilege at the BBC and his access to archive, and he mentioned that he was setting up a project for minority filmmakers, let's say, to access some of that archive, create their own things, because he said there's incredible stocks of archive, especially about Africa, that he'd like to see people do stuff with. But he himself, when he was asked about his next project, I mean, I kind of guessed this strangely from the coverage he's been doing. He's been doing these bigger epic documentaries like Trauma Zone about Russia. He's just done this one Shifty about the UK. And my guess was, what he confirmed is his next one's probably going to be about America. And not just mentions of America, but America probably at this moment where we know, as you were saying yesterday, the empire is kind of packing up the circus and going home.
Yes, it makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense for Curtis to do something like that. That's what I hope he'd be doing as well, to be fair. Who knows? It's not like out of the realms of possibility for us to meet him one day. It's not like it's not like I'm probably within 1 degree of separation at this point. So,
I've got his email address. I will be contacting him at some point, but he'll probably say yes when you finish reviewing my new 15-hour series about America. And we push on grimly.
You can say we are the only people in the world mad enough to have reviewed your entire oeuvre in real time, including that obscure one you made in the 80s about that Italian village. Like nobody's watched that, but we've watched it, mate.
Was it Western Supermare as well? We did, and the one.
No, it was oh god, what's it called again? The town. No, it wasn't Southend. Malton on the Naze. That was the seaside town. Malton on the Naze.
Yeah, that one, and the one about that northern town Morgoth came in for. Remember?
Yeah.
But you can tell him as well, there's like a moving wall because we're now covering them slower than he's making them. So we're not going to catch up.
I'm determined to get to the end of this one, and we've got. Let's carry on.
And the money started to take charge of politics once again.
Do you know that Nick Leeson? That was another Curtis documentary.
Yeah.
I noticed that somebody interviewed him recently.
Peter McCormack, I think, actually.
Yeah, McCormack, he had me on. Yeah. McCormack had me on. And I said, I wonder who else he's talked to. And the last one was Nick Leeson. I was like, wow, what a crazy.
Leeson seemed pretty unapologetic. He still had those kind of eyes that say, well, I had fun, but it's over now.
That's it. That's the epilogue of Bering's Bank.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, just pause. Just as we were talking about, like reflecting on our sort of coverage of Curto, I do slightly regret not having come on, and maybe Simon's the same, I don't know, but having come on for An Ocean Apart, because looking back, that is actually some of the deepest Curto that there is, right? Like, he really gets to the heart of like a crucial part of history. And I remember at the time you were saying like we can come on like as guests, and I was like, oh, I don't want to hog it, I don't want to. And then
I think it's been a very foundational documentary, not just for this, but in terms of the way that we've been thinking about lots of things. I reckon Curtis probably doesn't think of Ocean Apart as his. He probably thinks of it as David Dimbleby. And
really good.
Who's that historian who we co-wrote the book with? Because Curtis had a less direct hand in that one.
Yeah,
just that series. Did you say that series was co-written with a historian?
Yeah, I've got the book here. It's by David Dimbleby, and hold on, I have to actually.
I also
go and look at it. Hold
While you're looking up, I just want to demonstrate my OG credentials as well. I had seen and recommended An Ocean Apart to people before you did it.
Yeah, the historian Horace is called David Reynolds.
Oh, yeah.
David,
the BBC guy.
Yeah, I mean, the book was basically written by David Reynolds, and I imagine Dimbleby helped finesse it with his Oxbridge prose.
Reynolds ain't too bad. I've watched documentaries with him. He's not like woke or particularly lefty or anything. He's just quite a reasonable sort of mainstream. But
I mean, probably more than any other person responsible for red pilling me on Churchill, because all the most damaging Churchill stuff is in that Oceans Apart book and in the documentary. Like the quote about him saying, "Oh, I came to power not to destroy the British Empire, but to save it," and all this sort of stuff. That's how the Oceans Apart starts, with that quotation. And the book America Conquers Britain by L. Denny is a source for David Reynolds. In fact, lots of my sources come from David Reynolds. So, I rate him.
It was only the beginning, because another component was about to be fitted into this growing new system of power. In China, as Mao approached death, Jiang Qing was still determined to take his place as the leader. But there was one person who was equally determined to stop her. He was called Deng Xiaoping. Deng was one of the original revolutionaries, and he had been sidelined during the Cultural Revolution. But now, Deng believed that if Jiang Qing was allowed...
Loud whooping and cheering from Tony Blair somewhere. Yay! My hero. They love him, A lot of Western leaders love Deng, Blair included, but he's really well respected in those sorts of circles.
Yeah.
Can we get a height check? Was he over 5 foot? He was like really short.
It would be a disaster for China, and the country could splinter into civil war.
Pause. He was 157 centimeters tall, 5'2".
5'2". Okay, not as bad as I thought. Okay. It's not like Linda.
An anonymous poem appeared on a wall in Tiananmen Square. It was obviously addressed to Jiang Qing. Lady X, it said, "You are insane. To be empress is your ambition. Instead, take this mirror and see what you are really like. You deceive your superiors, and you delude your subordinates. Yet for types like you, good times won't last."
Why was he talking like a kind of, ancient mystic? That's what kind of like... Yeah, and Deng spoke, see your face in the river, and it's kind of a Chinese mode that they go into. It's like, I'm gonna do the Yoda thing.
Yeah, they were speaking with a cultural voice, of their traditions. Obviously, I mean, there were people who thought that Deng's intervention was possibly to do with a collaboration with the CIA, but apparently published intelligence assessments since then have said that no, the Gang of Four were genuine Marxist radicals. And so this wasn't a sort of subversion operation on the CIA's part, and nor was Deng's influence, linked to America in that same sense directly either. That's the official story.
I hope he ruled like that. Chairman Deng, what should we do today? The markets are down, and production is low, and he just sits there sage-like and he says, when the leaf blows in the wind.
He actually is very funny, because there's she was blaming him for her being sort of cornered at this time, and she tried to sort of do a kind of counteraction, and the Politburo in China removed Deng for his posts, and she went out and publicly said, quote, "Deng Xiaoping wants to consign me to hell. He's far worse even than Khrushchev ever was. The man wants to get crowned, to declare himself emperor." And she wrote about Marxism as a kind of female gynocentric phenomenon. She said, in the sphere of production, women are fundamental, for labor is the basic force of production, and all labor is born of woman. Man's contribution to history is nothing more than a drop of sperm. Men should move over, and in the future, let women take over the management of things. But the even better part is his put down, and this, this is like pure AA coming out here. Deng said, Jiang Qing is a very, very evil woman. She is so evil that any evil thing you say about her isn't evil enough. And if you ask me to judge her with the grades, as we do in China, I answer that this is impossible. There are no grades for Jiang Qing. That Jiang Qing is 1,000 times 1,000 below zero.
Brilliant.
He literally ticks her off like a schoolmaster.
Brilliant.
高山在痛哭，大海泪涛涌。
This is Deng's budget, by the way.
惊天动地的噩耗啊，震撼全球。
This is a party political broadcast for the Labour Party.
Then Mao died.
It'd be so funny if Rachel Reeves came out, just like hold the red box. The mountains are weeping, and the earth is shaking.
She does dark poetry over drone shots of the White Cliffs of Dover.
Jiang Qing came on her own, dressed in black. She was already preparing to take power with 3 others of the leadership. They were called the Gang of Four. But another group, backed by Deng Xiaoping, set out to destroy them.
Come on, Deng. Come on. We're all rooting for you, mate. We've seen this bitch. She's a nasty piece of work.
Sorry.
All posters.
You're still in your Stalinist phase, right? So that should mean that you should be backing her. Deng Xiaoping is like the reformist sort of mischievite. Like,
no.
What does Caleb think of this? Ask Caleb what the correct line is.
There's no way. Caleb.
Ask Comrade Morpin.
Right.
It's not up to you.
Comrade Mao asked Comrade Stalin what to do back in the day. And wasn't his advice just be shot of her, stick her in jail, put a bullet through her head, don't get married?
Mao was very aware she was a troublemaker. He wanted to suppress it.
So I feel like Stalin's advice would actually be crush this Gang of Four, personally.
So is there no equivalent to Jiang Qing in Soviet politics then? Because I'm thinking of Mao as the Stalin and Deng as the Khrushchev, or even the Gorbachev.
No, you've got all this wrong.
No,
you got all this wrong. Mao's wife, would be the Khrushchev. It's just that in Chinese history, Team Evil lost, when in Russian history, Team Evil won. Yeah. That's basically how it went down.
Went up all across China, attacking the Gang of Four, claiming that as well as being corrupt, they were really working for the CIA to undermine China.
When Jiang Qing came to Tachai, there seemed to be no end to her whims. Now she wanted her room sprayed with perfume. Then she wanted more carpets on the floor. And for curtains, she wanted to have special ones of a particular...
I mean, if you think Stalin would have been up for this shit, Horus, come on now. When he died, he had about 3 possessions. One of them was his pen. So he wouldn't have been up for this this womanly nonsense here. That she's.
Was she really doing it? Like, this is surely propaganda by her enemies. This is like the story.
No, I believe it. I 100% believe it.
Mao literally accused her of, quote, plotting and conspiring and being aggressive in purging people. And it was threatening people like Zhou Enlai and Deng Xiaoping. And he was against these kind of exclusive cliques. And he was trying to sort of play factions against each other, but she was kind of going way off the reservation for him. He used her
actually really cliquey. You're saying that the woman was really cliquey. That can't be right.
He was trying to use her to sort of counter this sort of moderates, to provide a kind of pole against which he could be the sort of sensible center. But he eventually sort of censured her in public and said she'd made too many enemies.
She sounds like an absolute nightmare. I'm by no means standing for her in any way. I just, I just you're supposed to be against the reformists. You hate Khrushchev, don't you? And presumably,
but come on, she is the Khrushchev. She is the
what's
deviation.
What's Deng Xiaoping? You're forgetting Deng Xiaoping.
Deng Xiaoping is. You've got to remember that how can I put this? Communism is living. Communism is living, Horace. Communism is living.
It's a living document.
That all arrangements are temporary. So when Lenin introduced the new economic policy, that was the right thing to do at the time. When Stalin reversed it, that was the right thing to do at the time. If Stalin had lived, maybe he would have come to do the same reforms that Deng did, because that was the right thing to do at the time. That is how my communist friends justify the actions of Deng and say that it's still communism.
So are you channeling Molotov, remembering the future about what Deng would go on to do in the 80s and 90s? Is that what we're talking about here?
Well, yeah. If you are Stalin, the official Stalin doctrine was the NEP was the right thing to do at the time. But that time,
and I think Molotov agreed, right?
That time by 1928 was over, and then it became a right deviation when Bukharin wanted to carry on the NEP. That would have been a problem because it would have recreated the bourgeoisie within the Soviet Republic. You see, that's a problem. So,
just to tie things. Sorry, go on. Well, just to tie things.
Go on, Horace.
Just to tie things back to an earlier episode of Kurto, I believe it was in Machines and Loving Grace, I think, where we had Ayn Rand, right? There was most of an episode about Ayn Rand. And her family actually lived under the Soviet regime for some years, but they fled during, I think, the late stages of the NEP, when it began to be undone and full communism began to be imposed, thanks to Stalin. That was when Rand's family then fled to America.
The thing is, the actual history of what Stalin did is more complicated than simply reversing the NEP and collectivizing the farms, because he did actually do some limited reforms after that point. So the things that Deng is really praised for, with reversing some of the collectivizations and so on and so forth, Stalin did them in the mid-30s himself. It wasn't
in the 30s, mid-30s.
In the mid-30s, he had seen what had gone wrong, right, with the famines and so on, and they actually made adjustments, and they actually changed. I mean, he changed it several times, and some of those reforms that Stalin made, you could even argue were, dare I say, within the framework of the Soviet Union, almost kind of libertarian, almost Dengist, right? So it's the point is that the stuff Deng did was still in the spirit of that kind of living communism thing they had going on. It's not fixed, doesn't have to be fixed only one way. And this is a very difficult thing to understand. Stalin was actually trying to shrink the administrative state at one point, and he had resistance from the bureaucratic center. Yeah.
And that is supposed to happen in Marx's communism. That is supposed to have the administrative state is supposed to cease to be needed, right? It's supposed to, the society begins to self-administer, and so he probably thought that ought to be happening. I'm guessing. Yeah.
So what Stalin was trying to do was to create a high-low middle mechanism with the bureaucracy as the middle, by that point the entrenched communist bureaucracy. Right, with the peasantry, the workers, like the revolution from below, from the workers, controlled by him at the top. Him almost as the Caesar, the workers as the bottom, putting pressure on the middle, and so he encouraged all sorts of things like, public sessions where the workers would have a chance to criticize the guy, the managers and things like that. It was called Revolution from.
Supposed to be.
What I'm saying is, Stalin. That was by Stalin's design. He was actually trying to have that feedback mechanism to stop that middle layer becoming a kind of entrenched ruling class. And one way of reading Khrushchev and Brezhnev era is actually the victory of that middle bureaucratic center over Stalin, the Red Tsar. It's just a different way of looking at it, but that's basically what happened.
I have heard that argued. To relate it specifically to post-Mao China, do you then see China as still communist now? Like it is, like it's doing what it needs to do to fulfill communism still?
Yeah.
It seems to.
Yeah, it's still definitely. If you have a look at that basic problem that Curto's got with the Western governments, where the markets have primary, like the British government can't do anything because of what the markets might say. In China, yeah, they have made a lot of money and they've got production and they've got their own markets and things that, from Deng's reforms. But the bottom line is what the government says goes. And Xi can seize those assets at any time of his choosing. The government can.
Well.
And again, within China, my understanding now, my knowledge of China is not as good as my knowledge of the Soviet Union, but all of those anti-corruption purges that Xi did to consolidate his power was, again, if you want to put it this way, Xi making sure that the party has primacy over any emergent oligarchy or corrupt middle layer or entrenched bureaucratic. So, like in the way that communism is set up, you're bound to keep on having these reoccurring struggles against the high and the middle, right? Because in pure power terms, it's a rival castle all the time. So, and Xi won it basically. Like there was a battle within China, and Xi won against this kind of emergent corrupt middle. That's my understanding.
I'm really surprised anyway. This rings remarkably, like this is basically the same conclusion I've arrived at. And if people listen to Impossible, but all the streams that I've ever been on, like that once or twice I have mentioned this, like that I think it really seems like a stretch to most people, but like to call China still communist, I actually think there is a case for that. And the one you've just made is basically what I thought as well. Like it's the power, Xi can reassert the old sense of probably not 1920s and 30s collectivization, but he can reassert communist control in some sense. I mean, obviously it's still a one-party state ruled by the Communist Party with a giant golden statue of Mao Zedong as well. I hear almost nobody else say that.
I mean, she can literally make business leaders and party kind of apparatchiks crawl on their knees in the street. And we've seen also.
And there is a billionaire, and there are billionaires allowed there. So there is extreme inequality of wealth allowed. But the billionaires, as far as I understand, are all compliant with the regime. Quite
subordinate too. Whereas Donald Trump, right, as much as people say, oh well, he's dictatorial and so on, I don't think Donald Trump could make like Jeff Bezos and Larry Ellison and Larry Fink crawl on their knees in shame. Or something.
In that sense, in America, to the extent that wealth counts, alongside power in some way, like there is a kind of a plurality of these, like plutocrats or magnates, right? Money magnates. That like Musk is pulling in a different direction to Ellison to some extent, who's somewhat different to Michael Bloomberg, who's somewhat different to Gates. Whereas in China, there is kind of a. Sorry.
But I guess what I would say is, as a class, those billionaires clearly act as an oligarchy, even if they have disagreements with each other. They still have primacy in some ways above the government. Also, this is something Morgoth said years ago. Like, what if Google went to war with France? Something like that, right? Because some of these American companies in themselves are so huge, have so much assets that the total money they control is bigger than the entire budget of first world nations. This is very different from the situation in China, where it's still the party that is in control. But anyway, we must carry on.
Particular dark color. Changqing and company demanded complete quietude. No one should laugh or talk loudly. Planes at a nearby airport had to stop their sorties. People had to be sent uphill to beat the woods to drive the birds away.
And 4 weeks after Mao's death, army units came in the middle of the night and arrested Jiang Qing. She was put in an underground cell next to the refrigeration unit that was holding Mao's body. She later tried to commit suicide by hitting her head against the wall. So the soldiers covered the walls with rubber.
Dark. Do you know what it reminds me of, Simon, to make a Shakespearean reference?
Ooh, what, banging your head against the wall?
The fact that they denied her committing suicide. It reminds me of Margaret of Anjou at the end of Shakespeare's Henry VI, Part 3, where she's going, "Go on, please kill me, guys." Because she's lost. She's lost to the War of the Roses. And they leave her live. And then she haunts Richard III as a ghost.
Yes.
Right, because she's left alive. That kind of reminds me of that, because she wanted to die. You know?
This is why you have to be very careful about creating martyrs in politics. And sometimes you have to say, no, we're just going to stick you in a cage.
To be a little bit pathetic here, like it reminded me, like sort of very slowly killing yourself by accretions. It reminded me of that bit in, is it Jam, where Chris Morris is talking about a guy chucking himself out of a first floor window over and over again. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like banging your head against the wall until you die. It just sounds awful. Like, absolutely
it's very adolescent kind of coded, isn't it?
Within 18 months, Deng Xiaoping defeated all other rivals, and he took power in China. The first thing he did was wipe the past everywhere. In Shanghai, the giant sign that said, "Long live the victory of Chairman Mao's Revolutionary Road," was taken down.
Forrest, is this a track by Aphex Twin?
Yeah, you're right, actually. Yeah, it's an Aphex Twin one. Yeah, you're right.
Oh, okay.
Just thinking now. Deng.
Sorry, it's off Ambient Works Volume 2, by the way.
Well done. Number 3, yeah.
Deng, the hero of Blair. First move, remove past. Interesting, isn't it?
Very.
While outside the Department of Public Tranquility in Beijing, which in reality was the headquarters of the secret police, the thoughts of Chairman Mao were also removed. Deng then set out to create a new kind of revolution.
To your earlier point, Horace, this right here is quite Khrushchev behavior, I'll grant you. The removal of Mao and stuff from the public places and quite Khrushchev-like behavior.
It's the modern form of Roman damnatio memoriae.
I mean, I was using it just to try and catch you out in some way and sort of like rip your Stalinist turn, but yeah. But it is actually turning out the same. I know hardly anything about Chinese history, so I'm learning.
Can I just say, when we win, I would love to be in charge of the Department of Public Tranquility. That sounds like a great job.
I had already sort of penciled you in for that role, Simon. Obviously, you have to create the role, but yeah.
Well, being somewhat of an introvert myself,
I was really worried about. I was worried about putting that video out, by the way, but it's kind of gone all right.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people say that they find you really calming, that your voice is calming.
I try to.
As the head of like Public Tranquility, you could actually just have yourself like reading, Wordsworth or something.
Long ASMR videos of very quiet, almost Douglas Murray-like purring in your ear.
Played on massive sound systems in public places.
That's right. Public parks, people doing Tai Chi to it, that kind of thing. I thought the introvert stuff was good, actually. I kind of liked it. I mean, as I saw Charlemagne tweeted about it and said, well, I'm not so convinced by this introversion thing. But I mean, the idea is it's probably, the baseline that a lot of us kind of have. I mean, I'm sort of probably classically an introvert, spent a lot of time as a child sort of basically doing things on my own, playing on my own, and I felt better like that. But you obviously develop social facility as you get older, and you know, you use things like performance to express those parts where you need to kind of bond with people. You know, you need to make associations. So yeah, you know, you never stay as one thing. You always kind of counter adapt as well.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of what I would blast out on the speakers if I was. I wouldn't make it tranquil. I'd kind of
hip hop.
Want to hector people. Well, you know, there's a David Bowie record in the 90s when it, you know, the one with Little Wonder on it, Earthling.
Yeah.
And there's one song where he's just like he's just belting out these lines like through a speaker. And I always thought it'd be cool to actually have those lines, you know, like imagine like Bowden with one of those old-fashioned speakers, right? And I don't want knowledge, I want certainty. I don't want knowledge, I want certainty. Can you just imagine that, like blasting through the streets? You like nobody can sleep or relax.
Bowden's the one person who wouldn't need it amplified. He chose the
Yeah, he actually wouldn't need the speaker, would he? He'd just stand in the middle of the street. I don't want knowledge, I want certainty.
It'd make a great bit of graffiti, wouldn't it? You never see our side doing any kind of pop art intervention. That would be quite good.
Have you guys been to any like, communist countries?
Only Britain.
Starmer's Britain. Just like I went to Vietnam about 10 years ago, and they do have, you know, like this, like what we're looking at here, like slogan boards. You know, they just have that, or like the communist, the hammer and sickle flag, just hanging on the street. You know,
repetition.
Yeah, I can't say I detected much actual communist ardor amongst the people. They're all just like busy trying to make a living and stuff. But, yeah, the party was trying.
To China, but the state would control and manage the whole system. His aim was simple. Money would replace the old revolutionary dreams. It was less dangerous. But he was going to use it to restore China's power. Deng Xiaoping knew that in the 19th century, the British had used drugs to control the Chinese. They had brought opium to China. It led to what the Chinese called the Century of Humiliation. Now, Deng was determined to reverse that, to reassert China's power. You couldn't use...
To be fair to the lad, it's kind of worked, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is he's got this famous cat theory. He said it doesn't matter if a cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice. And this was how he justified the move away from what he called Mao's poor socialism or poor communism. And interestingly, he said, to get rich is glorious. Well, it's widely attributed to him, but he never actually said it, but it's pinned on him historically. He said basically, actually, let some people get rich first. And the idea of getting rich, it's shades of Peter Mandelson talking about being intensely relaxed with people getting filthy rich.
Fast forward to China in the 90s, and it's like cash rules everything around me. Green, get the money. Everybody smoking Cuban cigars and you know, wearing bling, and kind of you know, they got those low rider cars hopping up and down, things like that. They are a bit like that, the Chinese, though. The Chinese are like that. They're into their luxury and their kind of bling and gambling and things
this
like that.
Really beautiful image, this urban scape. Just gorgeous.
It's great footage, actually. It's really interesting. This is all different now. This looks like it was taken in the early 80s or late 70s. This is the cableway that goes across the Yangtze River in Chongqing as it approaches the northern side station called Jinhualu. All of this now, if you go and look at the same imagery, all of these buildings are gleaming white.
Well, you mean they've been like new buildings there? Isn't it?
It looks like everything has either been demolished and rebuilt or just covered in nice, shiny, modern buildings. It's the same journey that you do across the river, but you land at the stations look very similar, but they're all kind of gleaming and white clad now. So,
you know,
Chongqing apparently has something like 30 or 35 million people.
Too many.
Gargantuan.
Looking at this image here, though, it could be in London, couldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
How
yeah.
many dismal buildings like this have we seen in Curtis documentaries?
Yeah.
I think that looks very Asian to me.
Blocks
I was just
of
going to
flats.
say,
Yeah.
what you said about sort of there's a streak of materialism in Chinese culture. Apparently, I mean, I noticed that restaurants like airport. I've noticed this in airports, but other places like Chinese restaurants, they got a thing about abalone. It's like higher status in China to eat abalone. It looks horrible to me. But I used to read this website called The Commentator, and one of their writers was Charles Crawford. I think he'd been a diplomat. And he said, yeah, China and Vietnam are the two most capitalist countries I've ever been to culturally. I've probably said this before, but he said, like, no, like they are the most, like, in terms of the people, in terms of what they actually want and how they behave if left alone and stuff. They immediately revert to small-scale private enterprise. Or it doesn't have to be small, but they just immediately try and start a business. They know nothing, despite having lived under communist parties. They know nothing of actual socialism. They just immediately revert to what we call capitalism, regardless of what government is over.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Thomas Sowell identifies the Chinese as a middleman minority wherever they go. And in fact, he even used the phrase, they're known as the Jews of the East. Thomas Sowell is in the book Migrations and Cultures. All of his stuff on the Chinese is like, look, the Chinese, wherever they've gone, take over as a middleman minority, and then they end up getting kicked out because they just take over all the business.
I've heard that is the story in Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Burma, Malaysia, and Indonesia. That is the case.
I mean, that's a lot of different countries to be kicked out of.
A lot of people. Yeah.
Cool it with the anti-Chinese remarks, Tom.
Anti-Sinoism.
Insert meme here.
Because the Americans already had their own drugs. Instead, he was going to use the mass mobilization of the Chinese people to invent another force.
Deng is making me look like a right mug, isn't he? Oh, yeah, it is actually communism. Yeah, you know, Rolex watches and fucking... But, yeah, it still is communism.
He described capitalization like this as a temporary primary stage of socialism to build a material base for true communism when they eventually get there.
That does make sense. If your aim is to build socialism or communism, to first accumulate as much capital as possible makes perfect sense. And then you can run it down over centuries instead of decades.
His point about the century of humiliation and what the British did to them as well, they did it through markets, they did it through trade, they did it through... So he's learning from history. It's like, well, look, if we don't do this, we're going to get fucked over again. This time by the Americans, but you know what I mean? Like, it's actually a very good plan. He's learned from history. So, and it's worked. Look at China now. It's worked. So,
of opium, a kind of mass consumerism never seen before in the world, driven by goods so cheap that everyone in the West would want them. Whole cities were going to be built in China that made just one kind of product, and they would be shipped in vast quantities to the West.
Look, it's your iPhone. There's your opium. Look, there's your opium war. It's your made in China iPhone. They've done it. They've done the reverse century humiliation on us. Fuck.
Here's your iPhone to complain about what's his name, Alabd Fattah or whatever he is.
Abdi Ali Fattah.
Yeah, get to work.
You gave up on utopian ideas about the future and didn't believe in anything any longer, apart from the money. And his allies in this would be the Western banks and their new system of global lending.
Deng's like, I'm just watching the game, controlling it.
He's the Murray Head of Asian politics.
He's played a blinder, yeah.
Because the banks would lend millions of people in the West the money to buy the Chinese goods, just like they had been lending to governments all around the world. It was going to be the perfect system.
Do you think Donald Trump has watched this, Simon?
Good point.
Do you think in private Donald Trump goes on like massive anti-Chinese rants, like, you know, with all the expletives and racial slurs and so on? He rants like Scarface at the phone, and
I'm hoping, like we had last week, the Nixon tapes. You know, I'm hoping the Trump tapes will come out at some point. That he'll have the recorders going in the White House.
Edward Limonov was now all alone in New York. He had published an article attacking the other emigres, so they all dropped him.
I know what Trump would do if somebody tried to show him Curtis. He'd focus on the bit in hypernormalization where he's dissed and be like, he would just take it in a really petty and personal way, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Adam Curtis is yet another shitlib who's dissed him.
Yeah.
In this scenario, is he doing what we're doing? He's watching the whole Curtis Irv from start to finish, or what?
I was just wondering if Trump has seen this bit on China, on Deng's plan in China, or if he has an understanding of it. Because
if
I can
Trump
imagine
has
him
seen
reacting
him
angrily.
Curtis, I imagine he would react angrily, but he would only watch the bits that were brought to him. Like, he's quite busy and stuff.
Yeah,
and there would just be some snide little weasel who thinks they can get something out of enraging him against Curtis or the BBC or something. So they would just bring him a little pressy of Curtis slagging Trump off.
Stephen Miller slipping Curtis tapes.
Or some ambitious staffer or something.
Enrage
You know, like that episode,
Go on, Noel. Let's go on.
Yeah, that moment when Khrushchev was like deliberately exposed to, like modernist sort of expressionist artists. Or whatever. Do you remember that? Have you seen this?
Yeah.
And it enraged him. It was like a trap and it just worked like a dream. Yeah, I reckon it would just be like that. The BBC are slagging.
Then Yelena, the woman he loved more than anything else in the world, met a photographer who promised to make her a model.
What city is that? It's looking very rough there.
That's New York.
It's looking very bad at this point.
Wow.
Trump's New York. Trump, the real estate mogul's New York. This was
Fred Trump's New York.
Yeah.
I think Trump had started in the 70s already.
Yeah. This is the era of Fort Apache. You know, this is kind of a pretty rough New York.
And this is Days of Rage, New York, as well, isn't it? I don't know if anyone's read that.
No, I don't know.
Days of Rage has been the subject of quite a lot of streams and essays in our sphere. This Brian Burrow, it's just about, well, especially the Weather Underground, but other movements like that. The ones who captured that woman who was Patty Hearst, who captured her, and like just renegades and terrorists and stuff from the 70s. And loads of them were from New York, obviously. The Weather Underground came out of New York and stuff. So.
Yeah. It's Warriors, New York, you know?
Yeah, Warriors.
Can you dig it?
It's John Carpenter's New York.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more
I fucking love this era of New York because all the best movies are set in this New York.
Oh, yeah.
It's hyper-normalization's New York, isn't it? It's Curtis New York.
Brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, some of this broken down New York footage, it'd be amazing to see some of it long form. It must be astonishing images out there.
He seduced her.
Sorry, just to pause again. But isn't Vince McMahon from New York as well?
Yeah, this is Vince. Vince would have cut. Vince was already on commentary in Madison Square Garden and stuff at this point. He was the commentator from about like 1972 or something. So he would have. This is Vince's New York too. Epic New York. Bruno Sammartino's New York. I want to go and live in New York in the 70s. Burn a bin and get mugged and go and watch wrestling or something.
That just
Go on
sounds like one of
strike
your
for
daily
success.
El Fata tweets, really. I want to go burn a bin.
And she left Limonov. Without love or money, Limonov became destitute. He lived in the cheapest hotel, surrounded by prostitutes and drug addicts. And he spent his days and nights wandering the city, alone.
Taxi Driver, that's another great one from this era.
Huggy
Mean
Bear
Streets.
from Starsky and Hutch there. Yeah.
While all around him, the newly powerful banks were building their headquarters among the old ruins.
We've seen that one with Christopher Walker and the King of New York. It's a bit later, but
Oh, no.
1985, King of New
Yeah.
York. Christopher Walken as I
Still-
think he plays Frank White, the gangster, or something like that.
Would you rate that out of 10?
It's not a 10. It's not a 10 out of 10 gangster movie, but it's
Nowhere near.
it's like a lesser known one that I kind of enjoy.
A 5. It's all right. It's pretty flawed. It's got Lawrence Fishburne in as well, isn't it?
That's right.
So
Yeah,
there's
that's right.
an implausible sort of relationship between what I think is supposed to be an Italian mafia guy and these black youngsters. It just didn't really happen in real life. But it has got some couple of good scenes in it and some good lines. It's by some famous director, isn't it? Like some.
It's
fairly
Brian De
famous-
Palma.
Oh,
Is it
De Palma.
King of New York De Palma? I'll have to look it up now. Hold on. No, it's Abel Ferrara. But that's not the movie
Yeah,
I'm
that's it.
thinking of. That's not the movie I'm thinking. That is Christopher Walken, King of New York. But I'm thinking of an earlier movie because that was 1990. That film. What's the one I'm
It
thinking?
feels
of?
quite 80s, that one.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe I just got the date wrong. Maybe I just got the date wrong.
King of Comedy's in New York, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what it is. Sorry, I got
Ah.
my Walken films mixed up. The 1985 is View to a Kill, which Walken is also in. That's why I've got 85 in my head. All
And
right.
that's not in New York, right?
That's not in New York. That's where he plays Max Zor. I think that's one of the more underrated
Yeah.
Bond
Great.
movies. 'Cause
Great
the,
Bond performance, yeah.
Yeah, he's old. He's old in that Roger Moore, but it's a good Moore. And I think the women in that one are quite hot.
Yeah.
But you don't mean Domino,
not great,
do you?
not Grace Jones. No, there's these two
She
like
comes onto him. She kind of, it's like up to her whether they do it. Like she comes onto him so strong that it's like he just yields to her. It's fucking.
No, I mean
I remember that from being a kid. I haven't even seen it since I was like 10 or something.
I mean, like the incidental women in that movie are hot, like Jenny Flex and the other one, like the Mayday, like Grace Jones's two little assistants. They're hot.
Yeah.
Hot on Grace Jones, anyway. But
Grace Jones is like a frightening creature. She's
is that the one where Roger Moore as Bond in the hotel just randomly slaps that woman? Just slaps her across the face and brings her to heel. Is that movie? That's
Could
an amazing. That's an
Yeah.
amazing Roger Moore moment.
He's in his 60s by then, I think.
Yeah, and it's random, just slaps her across the face, tames her immediately. Roger Moore Bond is the master of the karate chop. Remember, he always does the karate chop.
There's still some chat about like grimy. Well, October 31st in the chat said there's a good list of grimy New York movies on IMDb. It just made me think, isn't there also Last Exit to Brooklyn? That's I think grimy.
I
haven't seen it, but yeah, it's like it's the same author as in Requiem for a Dream.
There are some really gritty, quite grisly, low rent horror films set in New York at this time as well.
Yeah,
like
is Cruising Al Pacino one of them?
I once made I once
used it as a date movie.
Well, I once made my friends in uni watch Cruising because I was so into Al Pacino.
Yeah,
and obviously, like, it's full of gay stuff.
It's a somewhat unexpected.
There's the whole thing about which side you wear the thing on. So as a kind of lark, my friends ended up making like their own kind of 5-minute avant-garde version of it, like with kind of sinister washing of hands and this sort of stuff. It was kind of
someone's saying Cruising might have been set in California. I don't know. I still haven't seen it yet. I'm aware of its reputation.
It's that's a weird one. I feel like it was New York. I feel like Cruising was like New York gay scene.
Yeah,
but I'm trying to think of some of those weird. I feel like they call them video nasties. I remember there was a movie called Maniac. Maniac from about
Spit on Your Grave,
1980 sort of time, and they're really low rent, nasty horror films, but it's still like a really gritty New York
thriller killer.
I found out the other day I was reading a book called Bang about the 80s, like a history of the 80s, and it said that video nasties, the reason they existed was because the BBFC classifications only applied to movies, like cinema movies, and maybe not video releases, I guess, just because VHS was fairly new for a little while, and then like TV was covered by something else, but yeah, video was like almost completely uncensored or something for a few years in the 80s, and so like people were just putting out stuff that you couldn't put out by any other medium, but that you could still do it by video, including like was that one you mentioned, Simon? It's like a
thriller killer. Yeah, I Spit on Your Grave.
The first one.
I Spit on Your Grave.
Sadism.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It was a kind of early moral panic in the UK, at least I remember.
If I like ever retire, I might just disappear into the world, I might just cut off the world from about 2000 and live vicariously in gritty 1970s New York movies forever. Never come out again.
The French Connection is another grimy New York film.
Serpico, probably another good one.
Yeah. And also there's The Panic in Needle Park. That's another 70s.
That's the Pacino movie that got him Godfather, isn't it?
He's young in that. He's really young in that movie. Wow. Okay. Let's carry on. See, Giuliani wrecked the gritty New York movie by cleaning it up, didn't he?
Yeah. Him and Curtis Slewa.
And Bloomberg, Mayor Bloomberg.
Yeah.
We need the Democrats in power to wreck New York enough that they make good movies again.
Doing quite well at the moment. Yeah.
Then one day in Central Park, looking at the people all around him, Limonov.
Who?
Hey, are you on mute?
Ooh.
Oh, sorry. I was saying French Connection is a properly good movie as well. But is that New York? I always thought.
I think it is New York.
San Francisco, one of them.
I thought it was in New York because you've got the overhead train and the big car chase.
True. Which is the one in San Francisco then?
Bullet.
Dirty Harry.
Right.
Dirty Harry, San Francisco, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
There are overhead trains in Chicago as well, I believe.
No,
the French Connection's about a real heroin ring, and I think it was based in New York, like Queens or something. Like Italian.
Properly good film. Properly good film. Good chase sequence.
Yeah.
There's a sequel as well. Is that any good?
I haven't seen that.
No.
I'm trying to think. Death Wish is another one. It's New York, isn't it?
They got to be grimy. They got to be like brown and dismal looking.
Death Wish is pretty grimy.
Cool.
Gritty kind of revenge movie. Directed by Michael Winner. Remember, I went through my Michael Winner phase.
Yeah. People in the chat have mentioned Escape from New York, but they've just said that's a documentary anyway.
What? A documentary?
Yeah. Escape from New York.
That's a movie. That's a John Carpenter.
Yeah, they're making a joke that it was so bad it was just a documentary.
Right.
The New York representative.
Yeah, that's okay. That's an 80s one, though, isn't it?
I think so.
I was strictly limiting myself to only 70s.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what was the last gritty New York movie made? Was Heat in New York?
No, I don't think it was.
Heat was LA.
Heat was LA.
Gritty New York film, gosh.
It may actually be that Walken one, The King of New York, because that's 1990. It's pretty late. Can't think of any.
Yeah, that's got loads of scenes on like the scummy underground trains and stuff. And things like that. It does.
What's that? Surprisingly.
Oh, Seven is a. Oh, it's not Seven. They never say what city it's in though. So that's not.
But we're thinking like 70s kind of New York, aren't we? Really?
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Well, I think New York.
Made in Manhattan doesn't qualify. Person in the chat.
But you think it's a great film, but it doesn't qualify.
Not as gritty. No.
What's that one? There's a surprisingly good like cop film with De Niro and Sly Stallone in it. Is that in New York? That's pretty late. That's like 1990s.
Copland. It's New Jersey, isn't it? It's right by New York.
That's kind of it is there, right? It's up or their NYPD or something. That's a good film.
It's not
Copland. I like Copland.
It's not grimy looking. Yeah, it's a good film.
It's kind of 90s, but that's probably as late as that's probably the latest you can go. And New York is already starting to look cleaner at that point.
It's got scenes in New York in it, hasn't it? It's got like a scene on the bridge between the two with Michael Rappaport doing our favourite Zionist nutshell.
Someone's mentioned Summer of Sam, which is John Leguizamo. He's in that, and that's actually quite a good film. That does capture the sense of the grimy 70s pretty well, even though it's I can't remember when it was made, but it was within the last 20 years.
That was the late 90s. That was like.
Was it? Oh, okay.
I believe so. Yeah. What about Carlito's Way? That's not really grimy looking.
Is Carlito's Way New York?
Set in the 70s in, I believe, New York. Isn't it?
I suppose it is New York, isn't it? Yeah.
Grand
I don't
Central
think of
Station.
it as gritty. I don't think of Carlito's Way as gritty in the same way, though. It's kind of got a sheen to it, 90s sheen to it.
It's sleazy in a different. It's like a 70s coke sleazy coked up scene sort of, but it's not grimy brown looking.
Yeah, I mean, I also, I mean, not to get too far off the point, but I also did a mean line in gritty British gangster films, which I think are under discussed. There's a lot of quite good ones, and there's a lot of ropey. There's a lot of 5 out of 10s too, but they're still kind of gritty. Have you ever seen like Villain with Richard Burton in it?
No.
For example, I mean, that's an underrated, gritty 70s gangster film starring Richard Burton randomly. Bob Hoskins was in a pile of them as well. In fact, there's several Bob Hoskins kind of gritty gangster movies from that era, and Ray Winstone as well. I kind of dig a lot of those movies because they're gritty, you know. So
your favourite ones are the Craig Fairbrass ones, though, right? So you know the meathead who's in Rise of the Foot Soldier and films like that. He was in, I think he's in EastEnders as well. He's got like the perfect face for gangster films. It's like a slab of a man. He's made of just meat. He just looks like meat. He's in loads of these, like the last 10 or 15 years shit UK gangster films.
I haven't seen recent ones. I'm thinking of like, I don't know, like some of the Michael Caine ones too.
Yeah, Get Carter is really good.
You know, that's got a little cameo appearance from John Osborne in that thing. But yeah, Villain is one. If you haven't seen it, that kind of goes under the radar a little bit. I like. I mean, it's not really a gangster film, but I like 10 Rillington Place with Richard Attenborough. That's a horror movie, but it's gritty, kind of like damp under the floorboards and stuff like that. You know, so
Brighton Rock, a black and white crime film.
Yeah, that's a little bit early.
Yeah,
because it's like old, like the black and white. It's like 50s, that one, I think. Performance we've talked about before, Simon.
Yeah.
You know,
a lot of people saying Long Good Friday in the chat. Obviously, it's a good film to revisit. Long Good Friday. The plot is actually more subtle and complicated than you give it credit for at first. The detail in it.
It's genuinely quite adult as well, isn't it?
I like Scum as well. Movie.
Who's the daddy?
If I may ask, are we like near the end of this?
We have to finish. We got
bitter end. Yeah.
Bitter late.
Limonov decided that he was going to write a novel, but one that would have him as the central figure. It would be about the real experience of America, not the fake democracy. In the book, he described watching Americans in a cafe where he was working as a waiter. It is they, he wrote, who have introduced a plague into this world. The plague of money. The disease of money. The plague of buying and selling is their handiwork. I hate this system, and I am not ashamed that my hatred has sprung from my wife's betrayal. I clear away your leftovers while my wife fucks, and you amuse yourself with her, for the sole reason that there is an inequality. She has a cunt for which there are buyers, you, and I don't have a cunt. I'm going to blow up your world.
So he's taken a very dark path here, this dude.
Yeah, it's got shades of, again, like I said last week, shades of Said Qutb, you know, when he comes to America and goes to Greeley, Colorado in the late 40s and sees the kind of idle, soulless people. And Limonov is a more jagged, punky version of that. He gets involved in the early punk scene, and he's very critical of all sorts of materialism. And, you know, he condemns them doing things like, you know, having green lawns, like Qutb did, being obsessed with lawn care and drinking unsweetened tea. He didn't understand that. And he found a lot of their things like music. He said jazz. He just called it crude screaming. Based. And the sort of emphasis on physical strength, the kind of chudness of America, he thought was primitive and a sign of moral decline. And yeah, he was kind of fairly excoriating about that.
But can I ask, is he whoring his wife out in exchange for money here, or is she just slagging her out?
Why is this? Why?
She was, yeah. Well, they just, she was a model as well as being a sort of poet from the Soviet dissident romantic set, and she just got, you know, taken up by various people, including this photographer, and then she went and married an Italian count, and from there he was left alone, and he sort of descended into a kind of spiral of living as degenerately as he saw America around him living, and he worked in a French bistro called the Golden Calf, Le Veau d'Or, on the Upper West Side.
Why is he talking about his wife sleeping with guys as he's cleaning up plates?
Because I think he was very much driven by this sort of sexual bitterness when she left him. She was, you know, quite a trophy for him, and he just descended to living on welfare and struggling, and her career sort of, you know, as it were, took off.
I wonder, you guys said last week that every photo of him looks like it could be an album cover, and this is another example, maybe. But do you notice he was wearing a Ramones t-shirt?
Yeah.
What the Ramones, like some people would say, the first punk group or the first sort of famous punk group.
Yeah, and he used to hang out with people like Richard Hell and stuff in New York. That whole emergent scene around CBGBs and stuff.
Was he friends with like Patti Smith and stuff as well?
I think he may have been. Yeah, I have a feeling in my reading might have come up.
If you're into the Ramones, you probably have got a bit of a loser mentality. It's just this poor music, isn't it? It's like it's unaccomplished. It's deliberately a bit shit, and just lame. You know, there's stupid haircuts and sort of just. You know, like when punk first came about, it's actually a real matter of marketing. It's not in any way a grassroots. I don't think a grassroots upsurge. I mean, maybe it triggered off something grassroots, but it is just another thing for music promoters and record execs, right? And I just think like people who got into that, they think of themselves as rebels, but they're actually big suckers. Maybe an unpopular take. I don't know. Slag me off in the chat if you want. I'm being a bit of a heel there.
This guy would be Trad today, wouldn't he? Without doubt, he'd be Trad posting on Twitter.
By a strange route, yeah. He went through quite a lot of degrading encounters in New York, and he sort of drifted through the criminal fringe. But essentially, he kind of he declared himself the only true revolutionary, the only honest man left.
Did he get to know Al Sharpton? Just because you mentioned criminals. Just because I always think of because Al Sharpton obviously he's like a reverend, isn't he? But he was also apparently like in organised crime. in the 80s. Michael Franzese, the ex-mobster, actual like mob captain, talks about how two things about New York. One was that he just kept coming across Al Sharpton and having to like involve Al Sharpton in deals and pay him off and stuff. But also that he just said the Democrats, you wanted as a mobster, you wanted the Democrats in power. They didn't even, you didn't even have to bribe them a lot of the time. They came asking for bribes just to make deals and stuff. He said like the Republicans made you work for it. But, yes.
We're getting Ramon's apology here in chat here.
I just think they're shit. I just think they're a shit band, and like punk is mostly terrible music. Like, there will be exceptions. I have heard punk that was good, but it's just a poor scene, and the people in it are like particularly deluded. They think that they're into something really awesome or like really real or something. I'm sure for some of them it is. They have a great time moshing and whatever, like, but it's also there's a lot of losers and criminals and fakes.
So, I mean, not to sound too hipster, but to me, the Ramones are like a bubblegum group, aren't they? Let's creep up, up. It's all like they might as well be handsome. They might as well be handsome.
Just marketed as something new in some way.
I must admit, the people at university who I didn't like always liked the Ramones. Don't know why, but I mean, what you're saying about Chud there, I mean, that will come out in the wash later with Limonov when we go further, and he goes back to Russia and tries to assert a sort of robust working class political force in the form of the National Bolsheviks. So that's where he sees vitality.
The book. He also, I said this last week, but he also looks like Blam Britannica. So he was around now, he'd probably be making videos excoriating the right wing.
Called It's Me, Eddie, gave a picture of a new reality that Limonov saw emerging from under the surface of America's everyday life. People think they are free, but really they are becoming like simplified robots, following the rules of money, limited to satisfying only those desires that can be bought and sold. Every publisher he sent it to refused to publish it. But there was another person at the very top of America, in the White House itself, who was also about to expose a frightening reality underneath the surface of the society. In 1978, the president's wife, Betty Ford.
We don't, do we have like a klaxon sound for when Curtis just does a classic Curtis line? Because that was one.
It's kind of a pulsing sort of tension beat that he's got there. And yes, it is a Pie Corner audio track.
But what he said there was a nugget of classic Curtis, right? About the hidden reality beneath society.
Yeah, very much.
Revealed that she had become addicted to Valium. An addiction that she said had taken her into a strange state, where even her sense of time had become dislocated.
Sorry, is this Gerald Ford's wife?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting parallel this. Remember last week I mentioned the town of Wenatchee that featured in Hypernormalization, where they road tested the SSRI rollout in the early 90s, and this is the sort of scourge 20 years before of America kind of self-medicating the spread of Valium, which we actually saw clips of it, the James Mossman movie about the young couple in San Francisco, which Curtis uses excerpts from. That was kind of, again, the time of people started to sort of recreationally numb the pain at home.
Didn't you just say it's 1978?
Mid-70s. What, Gerald Ford was 70?
He'd have been out by
74.
Because it's Carter, isn't it?
Yeah.
Carter's before Reagan.
Yeah, but Betty Ford becomes obviously associated with
the Betty Ford clinics.
Rehabilitation, yeah.
Interesting.
As I look back, it was December, about a year ago, when I realized that there were some sort of blank spots where I had a hard time putting events in their separate slots. in time. To me, it was marvelous and beautiful, but to the family, I was beginning to show signs of over-medication.
Betty Ford's admission had a dramatic effect.
Life with Gerald was so depressing that she had to put herself on Valium and caused her mental problems.
In its wake, stories began to pour out of people all across America who were also addicted to Valium. It seemed that there was a private, hidden world of anxiety behind the public faces that affected millions of people. But Arthur Sackler, who in the 1960s had promoted Valium as beneficial and non-addictive, was unrepentant. And a company that he and his two brothers had started was about to develop a new drug, a synthetic form of opium called OxyContin. And that was going to deal with the next wave of anxiety that would hit America. Over the next 20 years, as more and more factories closed because of the cheap goods coming from China, millions of people in the communities would take OxyContin because it made them feel safe, in a bubble, protected from the growing uncertainties around them. And Harry Cordill, who had represented the miners in Appalachia, became certain that the anger under the surface there was going to grow. One day, he said, it would break out and infect the whole of America.
How are you, Mrs. Belcher?
I just want to comment on something here, Simon. I know we're going along, but the way that Curtis has tied together the threads of this one, this dude, the Betty Ford Clinic, Deng, the Century of Humiliation, the Opium Wars, background to this, it's actually quite well done, the way he's tying everything together here.
Yeah, I agree.
In 1990, he discovered he had Parkinson's, and he shot himself. While Kerry Thornley had become convinced that the coincidences in his past were not coincidences, that the CIA had somehow manipulated him to set up Operation Mindfuck. But he had no idea why. He had become lost. 20 years before, he and his friend Greg Hill had been early individualists. They believed that they could shape reality the way they wanted. But now, faced with the revelations about how intricate and complex power had become in the modern world, they felt powerless and lost. Thornley had retreated into a dream world of conspiracies, while Greg Hill had become an alcoholic and was equally lost. He wrote a letter to Thornley about how he had come to believe in nothing. "It is not injustice that overwhelms me now," he wrote, "but my sheer damn inability to know anything with any deep level of certainty. When despair is deep enough, even death seems pointless. Now I live without justice. I don't know why. I just live it. So be it." And Edward Limonov would finally get his novel, It's Me, Eddie, published in Russia. It would cause a sensation, and its dark vision of the reality behind the rhetoric of American democracy was going to influence an entire generation in Russia. It was the generation to whom the Americans would then try and sell the idea of democracy. All the talk of democracy, the book told them, was just a sham. Really, it was all about the money.
Sorry to interrupt this powerful ending, but a lot of people are wondering in chat, saying, "Well, what is that?"
I couldn't locate the footage. The closest I could come across it was a reference to a NASA test rocket that, as you can imagine, many of them go up and a lot of them come down like that. I think it's a visual metaphor for dreams coming down in flames. Essentially, it's the kind of the end of a certain American optimism. Pause. It's not the Challenger footage, but the song is called Starry Eyes by a band called Cigarettes After Sex.
What? How many more parts are there to this? To this one?
Oh, I don't know.
Never
endless.
ends.
It's endless. Yeah. Well, yeah. We'll have to be good. We'll have to crack on with the next few episodes with more Curtis, less Bants.
There's a couple of. I mean, we would have got through this had we not gone on a half-hour detour on naming gritty New York movies. But Port Film Co-op says. Taxi Driver was the ultimate.
And you were making a case for the miners as well. Sorry, Karen.
Oh yes, and we got lost in Bomberwerk and Horace the Milk Snatcher and all of that again. Port Film Co-op says Taxi Driver would be the ultimate grimy New York film. Two good gritty cop films, Prince of the City and the 7-Ups. Kids, 1994 by Larry Clark is a gritty Youth Street film. He also says 5 out of 10. King of New York is a masterpiece, Horace. Great aesthetic and the ultimate walk-in. Also check out The Funeral and Dangerous Game by Ferrara too. He also says to be sung by Simon, Deng bones, deng dry bones. Hear the word of the Lord.
Deng bones, deng. Dry bones, deng, deng. Dry bones, deng, dry bones. Now hear the word of the Lord.
AJ says, have you seen the Kinks' Predictable video? Very funny, and I love the rather pathetic hippie in the 70s character long after everyone has moved on. Yeah, it's a great little hidden gem, that Ray Davis slumming about in his apartment, bored, fed up, looking in the fridge, looking depressed. Great underappreciated 70s Kinks song, that one. Chris Primer says, I remember the buffoons the FBI arrested during the Bush admin. They looked like a bunch of hoods across state lines to sell them a bomb they didn't explode. And I think they were mentioned in an earlier Curtis documentary, weren't they? Those ones they arrested. Weren't they the ones that went to the theme park?
Yes.
Yeah. So we covered that in
Power of Nightmares.
Power of Nightmares. And I think that's it for the super chats. Well, thank you very much. Horace is now arguing with the chat about King of New York being very far from a masterpiece. Yeah, I have to say, I don't think. I mean, 5 out of 10 may be harsh. It's not a 10 out of 10. I remember it being a 6 or a 7. But it's been a good few years since I've seen that, 20 years or more. So, all right, cheers, everybody. You definitely got the heel heat this week, Horace, and you weren't even trying.
I'm quite enjoying it.
You're riling them up, actually fighting with them.
Yeah, let's have it.
One last plug for our friends at Wilfings Publishing, their new book, Bolsheviks. Go out and have a look at that. And the translator tells me if they sell 100 copies, they'll be translating the sequel to that as well. So if you want to know more about those Russians, go and buy that book, and you'll see more about that in the future anyway.
All right. Cheers, everyone. promo code Shawjan, etc., etc. Goodbye. Sorry it was so long, this guys. We had to reach the end, the bitter end.
What goes on in this town is none of your business.
As long as I'm living here, it is.
Then maybe you shouldn't be living here!
Well, that's easily fixed.